Right. So, welcome back, everybody, to another exciting day of the Squad podcast, the testimony, the ICO update. This time, the new recent hotfix 6.0.1 just got released, and it will be live, I believe, tomorrow. Is that correct, Kevin?
It was live today.
It was live today, the hotfix, yeah.
Oops. Out today. So, we are going to have another exciting podcast episode to talk about overall ICO update and especially the recent hotfix, legendary hotfix. Here right now with us, joining us, Campo and Kev, two returning podcast panelists, very high in demand, the spokespeople of ICO update, very knowledgeable about the game. Great to have you guys here. Kev and Campo, if you guys can give a quick introduction about yourself, starting with Kev.
I'm definitely pro or anti ICO, but I'm definitely learning as I played over a week how to maneuver around the new game. It's very different. Been playing Squad since it came out. Was one of the first 50 people to ever download the game. Been here ever since.
Awesome. How about you, Campo?
Very much the same when it comes to the ICO. Been getting used to it. It can be fun, but I'm definitely anti-ICO and the fact that it takes away from what I loved, which is the 5.1 squad. And yeah, comp player for the last 2 months.
Awesome. Alrighty, so let's get straight into this. So, in relation to the recent hotfix 6.0.1, what is your opinion about the hotfix? And on the screen, top center for the viewers, I put a couple main points from this hotfix, which is basically fixing a bunch of the sway by a couple percentages. I'll read up to 2, and then for the rest, you can read it on the screen. Decreased lateral sway by 10% for all rifles, DMRs, snipers, and AT launchers. And also increased rifle ADS speed by 10% when using iron sights and 5% when using reflex sights. And the last one, down there on the bottom, reduced arming distance of all handheld anti-tank weapons to 10 meters with the exception of the N-Law, which is now set to 20 meters. What do you guys think?
We were just talking about it before we were gone, but when it comes to the arming distance change, it seems to me like a very knee-jerk reaction. It's very much a shit, the vehicle's... Oh, wait. The swearing... I can't remember. Anyway, very bad decision in that it just seems like they didn't know how to balance it, and they just panicked and said, okay, this will make infantry be able to shoot at vehicles again with their hats and lights or something. It's a very odd decision.
So my understanding is that this hotfix, because it got changed to 10 meters, it's making it easier now for the hats and lats now, right?
Supposedly, yes.
Got it. Awesome, Swooper. Just in time. We're just getting started. How are you doing today?
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. All right, so really quick, because we have a couple new viewers here, if you want to give a quick intro about yourself, and we'll talk about number 3, the recent hotfix.
All right. Well, I'm Swooper. Hold on, fixing some audio stuff. 1 second.
No worries. Hey, Venom.
Hey, my audio all right, guys?
Perfect.
Alrighty. Well, I figured, why not? If you want my garbage takes, you can have them.
You're a high in demand person to be on the panel, Venom. Great to have you here. So quick introduction about yourself, how many hours you played, your background such as comp or casual and all that good stuff. And then we'll talk about question number 3 up there, top center of the screen. What is your opinion on the recent hotfix?
Alrighty. As far as background, I pretty much been, I bought Squad pretty much like days after it came out. I took kind of some long breaks in between because they kind of made some changes I didn't agree with. I have about 9. Let's see here, 890 hours. Pretty much just have played casual for the most part. I either play SL or machine gunner most of the time. So
Awesome. So are you a pro or anti ICO?
I am God's most ardent ICO enjoyer. I
Excellent.
think I think it's made good concept, questionable execution in a couple parts, but overall I'm really about it.
Awesome. Yeah, you're the exact type of person we are looking for on this podcast. Pro ICO. A lot of people here are wondering, what the logic is in regards to, why, people like you enjoy it a lot. And we want to learn from you guys, like what's going on, inside about what makes it fun, what makes it a successful
Yeah.
update. Even though you just mentioned, I know, you mentioned great concept, but questionable execution. But, other than that, overall, right, what makes you love it?
Biggest thing right away is I feel like is just from first impression, when I started playing ICO right off the bat, the first thing that came to mind is, oh, machine guns can actually suppress now. And that ties in because the problem, I think the fundamental problem with ICO is where the controversy is it uses slightly unrealistic means to attain kinda realistic outcomes, if that makes sense. For
Yeah.
example, it's like, yeah, like the gunplay was tighter pre ICO. Like, yeah, that's not a question. No serious person is going to say, "Oh yeah, the gunplay in the sense of responsiveness is better post ICO." No, nobody's going to say that. But I think the problem was pre ICO is the gunplay was so tight in a sense that it made squad tactics kind of just unfeasible. You know, I know as a machine gunner a lot, what would happen is I just wouldn't fire because I was going to just get one tapped the moment I gave off muzzle flash. So I like that ICO has made changes to make it to both slow down the firefights and reduce kind of the one taps, because it's hard to articulate, but it's just I like that there's an accuracy, but it needs to be slower, but the problem is how they did it. I can understand why there's a lot of kind of anger, because I will be the first to say, yeah, ICO is a 180 from what Squad used to be. And I can definitely see how it kind of the older, more established Squad people feel like they're getting pushed out.
Can I take a few minutes to respond?
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right. So for introductions, I'm Swooper. I'm very anti-ICO for a myriad of reasons. I'll kind of get into those as we progress this conversation a little bit. I'm a little bit more on the I like concepts, but it needs major tweaks side than the full revert side. I've got about 2,500 hours in the game since 2019. I did play Project Reality. Um, I've been in every sort of community from like hardcore milsim to casual to competitive. I've played competitive matches with multiple teams and even gave a shot at running a low tier comp team that was kind of aimed at allowing casual players to come in and learn the comp side of things. Um, Admin and ran multiple different servers, owned a couple of servers, very active in the squad community. I guess my question for you, Venom, is from my stance, yes, the gunplay is annoying, but that is not my problem with the ICO. That's something that everybody seems to focus on is the realism argument, which I think is complete bullshit from both sides. It's bullshit from both sides, and the only
Yeah.
reason I ever argue the realism argument is because some pro ICO people want to say it's super realistic. Me, from a active duty Marine Corps standpoint, it's not realistic at all. Um, I only get into those arguments for the sake of argument because arguing is fun, right? But my problem with the ICO is the changes that were made were supposed to promote teamwork. Now, I think what a lot of people are seeing is they think squad sticking close together or team sticking close together automatically equals teamwork. What are your opinions on the macro RTS level gameplay? Now, this is the team level real time strategy portion of Squad that has been affected. Now, I will say very negatively affected, and I made these predictions during the playtest that this is how it would affect them, and now we're seeing that in pubs. A lot of people are complaining about it, even on the pro ICO side. What are your opinions on the way that the ICO changed the macro gameplay for Squad?
Oh yeah, I would definitely agree. It's made people more defensive, but I think kind of the fundamental question is that because of the mechanics, or is that because squad leaders aren't moving people, kind of basically leading? And it's just, it feels very much like an X factor because people can play the game on two different servers and they borderline play two different games, dependent on commanders and squad leaders. It's difficult to say. I want some more hours in it first with the ICO. If I had to kind of make I like it in the sense that just frontal attacks are very heavily punished, but I feel like I just don't have enough hours to see how the rest of it's developing. I will say I can definitely understand. I've like played some of the just frustrating stalemates where nobody's moving, and like, yeah, that's not fun, but that's not necessarily. If squad leaders aren't leading, stalemates aren't necessarily a bad thing, if that makes sense.
Okay, let me expand on my question a little bit. What changes to the macro gameplay from V5 to V6 have you noticed in the hours that you've been playing? Just as an overarching servers that you've been playing on, what changes, if any, to the actual macro gameplay have you seen?
Oh,
We'll start there.
as far as basically the RTS map element,
Yes.
not a ton, honestly. I more stalemates. I will say, I'd say it's slightly more defensive. But in the hours I've played, and I think I've got 30, no, like 20-ish. Not a lot. Yeah. I'll say that. I think the problem is the ICO can't change the player base. It's fundamentally the problem.
Okay, so now, since you've answered that question, thank you for answering that question. The things I'd like to talk about that I've noticed pre V5 or pre V6, I'm sorry, so V5, V5.1. A defense point is going down, right? It doesn't matter if it's a blueberry squad being led by a experienced SL, a casual SL, whatever. People respond to it. People go back and push that cap. Radio going down, a defensive fob going down, or an offensive fob going down. People respond to it, right? It becomes a fight over that cap or that fob. You've got, if somebody calls out in command chat, hey, this next cap is completely undefended. We need bodies on it now. Like, this is a game winning move, and people do it. What I'm noticing now, and what I started noticing from playtest one, just to throw this out there, I played every single playtest 4 hours for each playtest. So the things that I started noticing during the playtest and the things that I've been most vocal about is people are so caught up in the immersion, we'll call it, the oh my god, this firefight is so awesome, back and forth. Like, I'm seeing teams fighting completely off caps with an uncapped point and neither team pushing onto that point to cap it anymore. Like, what I'm noticing now is V6 squad is Battle of Bunker Hill instead of squad. It's, hey, we're gonna fight over this point, or even not even over this point. It could be a fucking house 500 meters off point that somebody got caught in trying to push to a point, and then they spend the rest of their game playing over that house. People aren't playing squad anymore. Things aren't getting done that used to get done, even on the blueberry level. Fobs aren't being built. People aren't placing rallies. People aren't making those game changing moves. And when experienced SLs are getting into the servers and trying to make those game changing moves, they can't get anybody else to coordinate with them to do these things. And I can say this from experience just last night on one of the best servers, in my opinion, in squad when it comes to team play, and that's TT. We were playing Mutaha ASV2. Everybody knows how to play that layer. Like, from a RTS standpoint, I had the match set up. Like, I was the one running the logistics. Every single hab that got placed on that map, I'm the one that put down. I had the logistics set up to roll that match. But because everybody was so immersed, instead of fighting over police station, we had the entire team on Center Island fighting over ammo warehouse. And this is happening everywhere. This is happening on every single server I've ever played on since ICO dropped. People aren't playing squad anymore, and that's the problem. That's why I'm anti-ICO, is because people are playing immersive gunfight. They're not playing squad. The game of squad, it doesn't matter the game mode. It doesn't matter if it's, with the exception of invasion, people are still playing invasion, cool. But it doesn't matter if it's AS or RAS or even TC. People are so focused on the immersive aspect of singular gunfights that the entire premise of the game that we're playing goes out the window, and that's what I've seen. And I'll kind of leave that there.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't even really disagree. I mean, like, some obvious caveats, like, but in a sense, that's always been a problem in squad, in a sense, to varying degrees depending your server. And, like, especially after updates, is you get new people in and there is just an overall kind of drop, I guess, in quality in a sense. I will say with ICO, it has kind of reinforced, something that always existed in squad. Yeah, no question. But I feel like that's more of a matter of just kind of letting it cook and letting everybody learn kind of how things are done now. Like, your criticism isn't invalid, but it's something that's always existed in squad to an extent.
Okay, last response, just as a response to that, and then I'll let somebody else input. So, the biggest pro ICO argument that I've heard, minus the trolling and the go back to COD, those useless arguments. The biggest argument that I've heard for pro ICO is this is the teamwork update. It's forcing people to work as a team now. If that's the case, then what you just said shouldn't be happening. What you just said should be the exact opposite. If this is the update that is forcing everybody to work as a team, which is a ridiculous notion, it's never going to happen. There's no gameplay mechanics that can force teamwork, in my opinion. But
Yeah,
that's beside the point.
I'd agree.
But that's what everybody's saying is like, oh, it's forcing teamwork, this and that and the other, when we're seeing that it's not. But the other thing I would like to point out is the only people that cared enough about the playtest to play the playtest were probably experienced players, and we were still noticing these things. And experience means so many different things, but the random guy that bought it 20 hours ago probably isn't going to download the playtest. Let's just be honest about that. So if we're seeing these same problems on a mostly experienced player base during the playtests, why would this ever change in the general public servers? And that's the last thing I'm going to say for now. I'll let the other guys talk some more, but I just wanted to get those very important points out first.
Yep. Really quick here, in the chat, from I'm Big in Japan 1, he says, another 10 to 15% and the gunplay might be legit fun. It'll still be the worst gunplay in any FPS, but it'll be fun as a complete package. Still not competitive.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah. So Japan says another 10 to 15% and the gunplay might be legit fun. It'll still be the worst gunplay in any FPS, but it'll be fun as a complete package. Still not competitive.
I think 50%, and it'd be there, maybe. Oh, I would have known unless I tested it, obviously.
So to actually answer question 3, since we're talking about it now with Japan's thing, what are my opinions on the recent hotfix? I think it feels a lot better. A lot of people disagree with me, but I've played 6-ish hours since the update dropped. It feels a lot better than it did. 10% definitely feels a lot more than what 10% sounded like when we first saw the release notes. I agree that maybe another 10% and it'll be useful and fun. I disagree with Japan though. I think another 10 to 15%, and I think we would be able to feasibly run comp matches with it, and it might make a very interesting new dynamic in comp. I think we would be able to do it. Even right now with 6-1, I would be interested to see how a competitive scrim plays, if I'm being honest.
Awesome. And I believe Venom already answered number 3 here. So before we transition on to the next question here, I want to reach out to the chat box on Twitch. If you have any questions for the the people on the panel, feel free to ask. In between each main question on the center top of the screen, we'll have audience questions that we'll pull from the chat so we can keep engagement and the conversation diverse as possible. So Gugama511 asks, do the devs care about competitive?
Doesn't seem like it.
It doesn't seem like it. It depends on the dev and who you ask. Sergeant Ross left OWI for a long time, and he helped with OISC in the past quite extensively, and he seems to care about it. Otherwise, I would say probably not to that extent. But at the same time, my follow-up question is, do the devs play their own game? Like, would they care about comp if they don't play?
It would. After kind of seeing the arming changes, I would agree with that. Do the devs play their own game? It feels like sometimes. I mean, like, to answer the question, like, in a more blunt manner, I don't think the devs care about anybody. In a sense, I think the devs are gonna do what they do. One of the people in your Discord made a Afi. I'm sorry, it's got accent marks. It's fairly hard to pronounce. Kind of made a good argument that at this point, they've kind of made their money. It's mostly a passion project for them, and they're gonna kind of do what they do. And I not sure if I agree with that 100%, but I would agree with kind of the heart of that they're just gonna kind of do what they do because they've made their money.
I completely have to disagree. I don't think that if it was a passion project for starters, they would be far more communicative with the community. I think that's a taken. Changes like adding emotes for money, that doesn't seem very passion projecty to me. Doing a 180 of your marketing to suck in a heap of new players doesn't seem very. I don't know. I think I have to just completely disagree with that. It seems very corporate how OWI function. That's what I'd say to saying they seem very passionate.
So in general, like, what are we then to OWI?
Their money.
Huh.
That's a great question. I wish they'd tell us.
Huh. I guess we'll never know. Let's see. Checking the chat here. Husky says, I don't know who got the idea, but I crashed my heli 4 times yesterday because I can get suppressed now inside. We need to have lower suppression system and less sway / recoil, and the PIP, etc. can be as fun as V5. But of course, it will never be V5 again. Let's see. Robot comments. I went back to look at my messages from 2017 and 18 and scrolled around to see who was chatting back then. Everyone. Approximately 100 messages, you would see a QA member / squad developer / community manager in the chat. What about now?
I mean,
Yeah.
with kind of everything, I think they're pretty much going to be keeping their heads down for a while if they kind of decide to poke up.
Well, I mean, that's been a thing for years now, even before ICO. Like, he's absolutely right. Even in the last year, how often do you see the devs actually responding to the community in any of the forums?
I'm curious as to how OWI structure is like, because we have a CM as of, today. We have a community manager, but I'm not sure if the community manager is heavily restricted in their communications to us, the players in the Discord, and, whatever they post at, coming from above.
So, to respond to Husky, we need to have lower suppression system and less sway recoil, and PIP and everything can be as fun as V5. It'll never be V5 again. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think suppression is great. The way that they did it, I think it's completely overdone. I've said this every single time I've been on this podcast, and I think that if it was slightly not as strong, and instead of being full blur, have like a restrictive tunnel vision, not like the vignetting that we used to have, but like full blur, but at least have something in front of you that you can see. I think it would represent the suppression and tunnel focus that you get in real life a lot better. It would also make it a lot better to play because as of right now, being 75% of the time suppressed, especially if you have a Vic shooting into point, like you don't even get to see enough to enjoy the game. Um, with that being said, a little bit of a plug for Husky here is he's actually made a mod that has pretty much taken the ICO, tuned it down to a point where I think most people that are playing it are super happy. And yeah, I think if the devs would play that mod and kind of use that as a baseline to say like, okay, if this is what people that are complaining about the ICO, if this is what they think is good, then I think that it would shed a lot of light into the entire argument because he did a great job on that mod.
I just had the idea, Swooper, that what if, hypothetically, Husky's mod was adopted by OWI in terms of another future playtest for a possible version 7 update?
I mean, I think that would be great. My personal feedback for the mod is I think we could probably do with more suppression. I think the suppression was tuned down a little bit too much. A lot of people are gonna call me an idiot for saying that, but that's my personal opinion. But everything else he did is pretty spot on with exactly how I wish V6 would have been released. It's kind of that perfect. It's kind of that perfect middle ground that everybody's been talking about since the playtests, and I think it plays a lot better, even a lot better than the hotfix that they dropped now. It's actually fun to play, but it still slows gameplay down on the personal level to a fair extent.
Awesome. Looks like we can transition over to question number 6. What aspects of the ICO would you like to change? I know everyone touched upon this just a bit, but if there's any, top 2, top 3.
Bueller.
Wait, what? Um, Swooper?
I'm not saying anything. I think Campo's trying to talk, but nothing's really
No,
coming.
no, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Oh, well then no. I was gonna let somebody else take that question because I talk a lot.
Got it. Venom?
I think I just why are chopper pilots being suppressed? I play
was-
nothing. I play
That was
nothing.
part of 6.1. Everybody in vehicles gets suppressed now.
Yeah, why? I mean, I could get it for like ground Vics, unprotected ground Vics, right? Like techies and stuff. But just that's my biggest problem with OWI is they make changes that are just like why and then don't really explain them whatsoever. It feels like I just
Well, I mean, I can see the point behind the change, and that was because before they did it, Vix were super OP. Like even somebody in an open top turret wasn't getting suppressed.
yeah,
Um,
that I
so
agree.
I can see what the thought process was there, but it was just kind of a blanket band-aid on everything instead of being a situation dictates type thing.
Yeah, what I just don't get the point of why couldn't you just have gunners get suppressed and make it simple? I just yeah, that just have gunners be suppressed. It it's just back and forth. I can definitely understand why people are so frustrated because it's just like okay, what is this actually solving?
Immersion?
So I guess on that note, I have another question for you specifically, Venom. So a lot of the people that are upset with the ICO, these are people, if you just look at the Steam reviews and the people that are talking in the Discord, these are people with thousands and thousands of hours in the game that have been playing the game for years upon years. A lot of them are comp community, a lot of them aren't. Um, One of the biggest frustrations is that after so many years of the game being in full release, they decided to do a full overhaul. And in their full overhaul, a lot of the things, like Husky just mentioned, a lot of the bugs that we've been complaining about for years and years are still present, haven't been addressed, haven't been fixed. The spawn mechanics that we've been asking them to change up and fix to help fix gameplay haven't been addressed. Like absolutely nothing that anybody has asked for has been addressed, and then they drop this huge update that nobody asked for. Is that something that you think is fair for the community to be upset with?
Absolutely, yeah. I can understand how when you're established in something like that and you just get a 180, I can absolutely, you know, under yeah, just yeah, it's absolutely right to be fair. The problem is and that's my biggest problem with ICO anti-ICO split is we're not talking about specific gameplay mechanics so much as the fundamental question of what squad should be. And I'm wondering if there can really be a middle ground there.
I could.
Because
Sorry, go on, go on.
because I don't want to straw man, but it feels like when somebody has the take of that's anti-ICO that oh suppression is a skill cap, and it's just like yes, it's it's hard to respond when you have to. It's hard to respond when you have to defend, I guess, a direction rather than a specific thing. Does that make sense?
I could answer a couple of those. So, my argument for the first or second part there with the suppression is like a skill cap. If people are saying that, it's more the fact that when you add the suppression on top of two people 20 meters away shooting each other, it kind of is because when you're both fully blurred, full autoing each other, it's very luck based. So there's not really any skill expression there. What used to be like from my own experience now, when I'd go into a 1v1 in a public server, I was fully confident that I just won the gunfight, right? But now I go into a 1v1 at that range, and I'm like, holy, like this guy could get lucky and just dome me, which happens all the time now, and it's very frustrating. And then for your first part, with the sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Oh, right, yep. So basically, when it comes to can there be a middle ground, I think like why can there not be if the gunplay is just toned down to where we feel like we can shoot straight again? How is that not a middle ground? Because you're gonna have all the aspects of the ICO, so like the suppression, the lower movement, the no jumping over shit anymore. How is that not gonna be a middle ground?
Because I can kind of already see it brewing is that basically it's just shaving off the ICO until there's nothing but cosmetics left. Effectively.
What do you mean?
Like, for example, it's like part of the reason right now is what makes suppression more important is that the gunplay is a little loose right now with sway, so it's important to get closer, it's important to get better positioning. It's like at what point do you just turn down the gun, do you just reverse ICO until it's just pre-ICO with slightly different cosmetic filters? And I feel like 6.1 is it's a good step where it's like taking some of the sting off of where people don't feel like, oh, it's just basically RNG. But at a certain point, it's a question of should 1v1 kind of be dodgy? Just as kind of a feature of the game to encourage, the fucking meta teamwork of you need Overwatch to reliably advance. It's a problem. It's defending a concept of like, should you be able to push by yourself? And there's so many factors that go into it. It's hard to point at any one thing and be like, yes, this is the thing we need to like punish punish lone wolfing and such.
But
Okay,
you should.
so
You go.
so with that being said, what if I told you that the ICO actually makes lone wolfing easier and more OP?
To an extent, yes, if you're not working
No,
together.
not to an extent. No, it makes lone wolfing easier and more OP. That's how I
Agreed.
play now. If I
Yeah,
don't
that's how I play
have
too.
like if I don't have my SigTac guys on playing with me, I lone wolf and I drop 25 kills because
Same.
it's easy.
I mean,
Sure,
Anyway,
I'll add something
so
random and get a random medic revive me, but that's barely team. That's not really teamwork still.
So I want to dive into something that you mentioned, and that was what is squad supposed to be? That kind of split, right? Um, can we agree that at its base, get rid of the shooting, get rid of the singular micro level gameplay for a second. Let's not even think about the shooting mechanics. Let's not think about the suppression and all of that. Can we agree that Squad is essentially a real-time strategy game where there are objectives that each team is fighting for, and the way that you decide who wins is through a ticket system where as everything costs tickets, that is your win-loss deciding factor is tickets at the end of the game.
I mean, yeah, that's the mechanics of the game.
Okay, so that is Squad, right? If this update is making it so that that game is no longer being played, is it a good update?
Depends how you feel about the meta gameplay. It's like, do you want essentially the basically fire and movement prioritized over, I guess, because like let's be clear, all of you have thousands and thousands of hours. There is no update that's going to be made that's not going to have you guys in the probably top 20% of the leaderboards. It's a fundamentally different experience for a person that just plays squad on the weekend and they feel like, why am I playing this game? Because I'm just getting one tapped. I think one of the biggest kind of pros for the ICO is it makes it feel like for the average person that they're contributing. You know,
so let's just get past feelings versus fact, right? They feel like they're contributing because they're putting down suppression and suppressing enemy players, but are they actually contributing if they're not helping with the ticket deficit and if they're not actively pushing objectives? Are they actually contributing or do they just feel like they're contributing?
depends whether they're doing it being the key part.
Okay, that's fair, right?
I think it's totally valid for somebody to feel like they're contributing. It's a video game at the end of the day, right? As much as I'm anti ICO, I think it's kind of great that people can jump onto a game and it's not a mill sim, right? None of us have ever wanted Squad to be a mill sim. If it were a mill sim, those type of players wouldn't be here. I've probably brought 30 plus people, friends of mine from my pro Counter-Strike days and back to play Squad. Those guys aren't diehard like I am. I want them to jump on and play. If it was a mill sim, they wouldn't do it. So I think it's okay for the game to feel something, to feel like you're engaged, to feel like you're immersed, to feel like you're making a difference compared to someone like myself who runs around and gets 40 kills. It's
Right.
a very different experience for both parties, and I think it's totally valid to have both experiences.
I think you kind of misunderstood my question with that and my direction with that. Like, absolutely, like, have fun, feel like you're contributing for sure. But if you're not actually contributing to the game, is it better for them to feel that they're contributing, even though they're not, or would it be better to address mechanics of the game to have them actually be able to contribute to the game we're playing? Because, like, if you're playing baseball, you can pat somebody on the back for hitting foul balls all day, but did they actually do anything?
I mean, you could probably take that argument one of two ways, right? One is, are they tactically making a difference? And the second option is, are they making it more fun for others because they're actually just there in the server, populating a server, and everyone's having fun, right? An unpopulated server is a dead server. So, I mean, you can kind of take it one of both ways.
Yeah, so I guess the point I'm trying to make is, do we want to play squad or do we want to have an immersive war simulator experience, right? Do we want to spend an hour fighting over Hilltop Bunker, or do we want to play Squad, like actually play Squad, the game that, as it's designed, the actual mechanics of the game, or do we just want a immersive firefight simulator? And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is like people feel, especially new players, they feel like they're being useful in individual firefights, but very rarely are they actually being useful in the game of Squad, and that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Oh
Is
yeah, I
that's
wouldn't
my
dispute
biggest
that. Look,
problem.
yeah, no, I would definitely agree. You have too much turtling, but I would say that's more the responsibility of like squad leaders and experienced players to fix rather than mechanics, if that makes sense. Because encouraging player behavior with mechanics is just, it's such a hard thing to do. I not it's kind of an example of this is just kind of a little segue is like the arming distance change. I see it go down to 10 meters is like me as when I play armor, kind of the message I've got from that is, oh, okay, armor's getting too close to infantry, stay away. I think I struggle to think of mechanics that would force players to contribute, essentially, if that makes sense.
What do you want them to contribute to?
Is that a question for Venom or me?
Yeah. No, well, I mean, the person who's saying force them to contribute, I just joined the conversation, so I'm like legitimately asking, what do you want them to contribute to?
So he was responding to me saying that it's great if, especially the newer players feel like they're contributing, but if they're not actually contributing to the game, then it's a difference between feeling and reality. My entire point was that what we're seeing a lot now with V6 and even in the playtest is you'll have a lot of people getting, and this is whole squads, whole teams even, getting sucked into a firefight on one point, even if it's not an actual objective. Like, for example, last night when I was playing on Mutaha, the point was police station and the fight happened at ammo warehouse for the entire match. Police station didn't even get capped by either team for a solid 30 minutes. So like they feel like they're contributing, and they are, to an individual firefight, right? Like they're laying down suppression, they might get a kill here or there. They feel like they're contributing because like it's this huge tactical immersive experience of a firefight. But when you actually look at the game of squad, that firefight meant absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of the actual game. So he was responding to me talking about game mechanics, saying that there's not really game mechanics that would force people to contribute to the actual game of squad, which I disagree. If we address the spawn mechanics that are the biggest culprit of the run die spawn thing that we're seeing constantly, I think that would do a lot more than V6 did to increase teamwork, force cohesion, and as long as SLs are doing their job, it would make it a lot harder for people not to contribute to the actual game that we're playing.
Really quick, I want to chime in here. Pizza Man 19764. I'm gonna read out his comment. Maybe this adds to the discussion as well for thinking and talking points here. He says this: you increase the power of team-based elements over individual elements. FOB elements like AA and HMGs were very powerful in PR, which encouraged working as a team. FOBs are really only good as quick spawn points in squad. And he adds on to say, I'm not sure exactly how to fix it in squad because I doubt they'll add major air elements.
Wait, I'm confused. So they're saying that if you have powerful emplacements, it'll promote teamwork and that it's harder to get through, so you have to work together more to push through them? Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, Pizza, could you clarify real quick? Oh, he says this was a response to how to stop lone wolfing. Oh, and reading his lone wolf comment earlier from Pizza Man, he says, I don't see how it encourages lone wolfing. I just think that there's still elements in squad that encourage lone wolfing separate from ICO changes.
I think lone wolfing is so overblown. I think people are using that term so loosely. Like flanking is a good strategic tactical maneuver. It's okay to take the off beaten path to flank around, find the squad lanes, find where people aren't, flank around and take out a hab. That's a perfectly okay tactic, whether you do that with one or two people or a whole squad. So
I don't really think that's what he means by lone wolfing.
I guess
right?
the idea of lone wolfing is doing stuff alone, I guess, is what they're saying, right? Like
yeah, just running and gunning.
walking
But
around and killing. I think the why that's promoted so much, I'd say to answer why it's promoted, is in a game where every kill you get is a ticket that contributes to the team. Naturally, if you're getting 30 kills, that's 30 kills that's 30 tickets you've contributed to your team. And when the easiest way to get kills now is to go off on your own, make sure you don't get suppressed, and just pick people off. It's always going to promote that style with how the game naturally plays. To win the game, you get kills, you kill radios, And the easiest
So
way
the-
to
I don't
get
really-
kills.
the
is to
I
reason
don't
go-
why
really
we're-
think that that's why people lone wolf. To be honest, I think that the reason that people are lone wolfing is because it's the path of least resistance, right?
Yeah.
A gameplay loop where you just log in, you spawn somewhere, you run around, you don't really talk to people, you don't engage, you just try to left click on heads, is really easy to fall into, because interacting with people, I think in modern culture right now it's it's something that people don't really want, right? And a lot of people just kind of want to come in, turn their brain off, and shoot things. And this whole idea of working with a team and working with a squad is something that is not really part of people's lexicon of what they would call fun immediately. Even though when it happens, they enjoy it, but the process of getting there and like doing logistics of like setting everything up and being patient, waiting for each other, right, and you know, disciplining yourself in a video game is, you know, it's not natural. So people just don't do it. And I think that's where lone wolfing comes more often than like, oh, I'm gonna just, you know, get the kills, right? I don't think people really want to get there. Everybody wants to get kills, right? Squads of 9 want to get kills. But how do you get there is the question, right?
So the reason why lone wolfing keeps getting brought up, I think, stems from the original release notes for the playtest, where OWI specifically stated that their goal is to make it so that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but one lone player can't go and take out an entire squad by himself. Um, and my argument with that, and we have video evidence and testimony evidence about this not being the case. My argument to that is the ICO did the exact opposite. It is now easier for me to separate from my squad. Whether my squad and I are working together or not, it's now easier for me to separate, even just as a rifleman, and take out an entire squad by myself than it ever was in V5. Because of the suppression mechanic, because of how close people are sticking together. I send one round over their heads, they're all suppressed, and then I just click heads. It makes it easier. And in the current state of the game, when we have nothing but, like I was saying earlier, we have nothing but people fighting over objectives that aren't actually objectives, getting immersed into firefights that don't matter, and not playing squad anymore. Unless I have a group of my friends on where we're actually going to play the game correctly, if I hop into a random server, I am more likely now to just hop in a random squad, pick up a rifleman kit, and go off on my own and tap heads than I ever was in V5. In V5, I was a squad lead main. Any server I hopped on, I was squad leading 95% of the time. Now, I won't do it. The only time I'm squad leading or really playing squad now is when I have, like a full sig tech squad on, for example, or when I'm playing with, the comp players that are going and playing on certain servers and this and that. And it's because since V6 dropped, there is so much less actual teamwork going on, and especially on the team level macro side of things. And being a squad leader is so fucking frustrating right now because everybody gets immersed into these firefights that don't matter and they won't listen to you. So most of us, and I know I'm not nearly the only one that feels this way, we don't even want a squad lead anymore because it's just not worth it. So I think it's actually made it so that it's more appealing for the guys with 2, 3, 4,000 hours to just join a random squad, grab a rifleman kit, and go lone wolf. I think that they completely missed the mark on what they were trying to do just based off of that quote alone.
So I'm also a really big squad lead main. It's like pretty much the only role that I play because I like infantry in a certain way. And it's way more fun for me to just kind of look at the map and keep things organized and put people in a certain spot. And I totally agree that in certain circumstances, it's really easy to wipe out people that just think that blobbing together is going to answer the question of not dying, right? Why a squad will be killed by a lone wolf under very specific circumstances, which is where people are kind of just mindlessly following each other, not really doing the things that you want to group people up for. And what I mean by grouping people up for is mutual support. I'm going to watch you, you're going to move, we're going to look at different positions. We have the ability to like see things. We have medics who are ready to like pick stuff up. We have somebody who's commanding with the greater form, who's like looked at the map and maybe said, hey, if we go this way, we'll be able to see what's going on because there's somebody watching us. There are things that you get as a squad, especially within the greater form of a team, that you do not get as a lone wolf. But if a squad decides to just ignore those things, then yeah, absolutely. Like they can get pinned down and suppressed, which is totally what these weapons are for, right?
Yeah.
Like a machine gun is designed to do that if a squad is like caught with its pants down. But there are things that squads can do that individuals can't do that will make them basically bulletproof against like lone wolves. And I run into, dudes in the bushes all the time. And yeah, I might lose one or two guys. But I have two medics. I've got two machine guns, right? We can always pick those guys up. I can always ask for support from nearby squad. And eventually we just pick that guy up, revive everybody, and frankly, nothing happened. And that feels like a really big improvement, in my opinion, because it's way harder for people to wipe a squad that's actually cohesive versus, a squad of blueberries or versus like a bunch of guys who might as well be blueberries who are just kind of following around. And I see it all the time where you have a squad that's together, but there's no plan. There's no idea for how to get from A to B. And frankly, it's exhausting to do it, right? It's exhausting to make sure that people are covering each other, to make sure that you're going the right way, to make sure that everybody's using terrain properly, right? Make sure the sectors are covered. But if you don't, yeah, somebody that's smart picks the right bush, he'll fuck you up. And people and I think the big issue here is that there is a dearth of effort to learn these kinds of tactics and an effort to employ them because they're seen as kind of LARPy. But whenever I employ them, people seem to have lots of fun. I have more fun when I get in squads that use them, even though it's rare. But I think people are learning, and I think if we stick with it, we'll learn a whole bunch of new metas that are much more enjoyable than what we had before. Because to go on a rant, not to go on a rant, I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the ICO that we didn't have previously.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. There are good parts of the ICO that I enjoy, and I've already touched on all of those things. But overall, the macro gameplay is suffering extremely hard on 90% of servers that I've played on, and the ones that it's not suffering extremely hard on is because it's the servers that the comp teams play on, like TT. Um, I haven't found one normal pubby server where I'm not seeing the macro issues that are being caused by these mechanics.
Can
I'm
I?
on the potato. Oh,
I was just gonna say, can we kind of agree though that's always been an issue after literally almost every update to an extent?
That's just squad in general. Come on, let's be super realistic.
So I agree and I disagree. Before ICO, it was a lot easier. Like, if I'm on a server and a team's getting rolled and I take commander and it's a map that I know and I like actually, you know, try to get some coordination and tell squads like, hey, go here, set a fob here, push these lanes. Like this is what we're doing. 9 times out of 10, I can take a team that was getting rolled and win the next match. Can't do that with the ICO now. At least I haven't been able to. Um, and it's because of those situations. Like I said yesterday on Mutaha, AASV2. Everybody knows how to play AASV2 if you've been playing the game for any sort of time, right? Especially comp players, we know the map, we know the routes, we know the cap zones, we know it. Ammo warehouse wasn't even a point, and 90% of the team was fighting over ammo warehouse for most of the match. Like it just it's creating too much immersion and people are forgetting about the overarching game for those immersive firefights that are happening that don't matter. Um, that's kind of my biggest point with that is it is hurting the macro gameplay. It might make the micro gameplay more enjoyable to an extent, but it's hurting the macro gameplay where before in V5 it was really easy for one or two good SLs to make an entire team go from getting rolled to putting up a good fight or even winning. And now we can't really do that, is what I'm noticing.
I want to say that a lot of matches that I've played suffered from the exact same problem, even before the ICO, where people did that. And I don't really think that the mechanics of weapon sway and suppression really contribute to the idea that some smartass wants to build a hab. that one guy who decides to be a smartass and build a habit tunnel, right? And then one guy decides to spawn in that point, a firefight breaks out. Lots of blueberries want to get in the firefight, they're not really getting any leadership. They want to go to where the bullets are flying. And because of that, these blueberries aren't really being led, they're not really looking at the macro gameplay, and regardless of what kind of shooting mechanics you have, you're going to see people wanting to go to where the bullets are flying. And this is an issue on both teams. So this is like a feedback loop. More people are spawning where they want to have the firefight, so they want to shoot things. More people are there. And you can make the and that's not really a thing of how ICO works. That's just a thing of people not really being interested in the gameplay and just being self-interested in having really interesting firefights for themselves, right? And I've seen that lots of times with 5.0. I've seen it with 6.0. It's the same issue, right? I want to go to where the bullets are. If I click on this tab where I hear the bullets, I'm going to get to fight, and that's it. I don't really think that like the firefights being more immersive overrides that basic instinct. You know what I mean?
Okay, I agree that it was an issue before V6, but it wasn't nearly as big of an issue as it is now. Um, the the thing about the firefights being, and I'm using the term immersive, I don't think the firefights are more immersive. People are just getting more immersed in tunnel vision into them now. It is 10 times harder to get a single player or an entire squad to disengage from a fight. Like before V5, I could, ask like, "Hey, Squad 5, can you, as you guys start going down, can you spawn on the blockade hab, get defense up at blockade? Police is starting to go down. We need some defense over there." Yeah, sure, no problem. And then they would start spawning over there most of the time. Sometimes you would have to ask a couple different squads before somebody would. But now you're seeing like they're so tunnel visioned and immersed in the fight because of the changes that you can't get anybody to do anything. Like you can't even get like defense squad, the one that's supposed to be on defense. You can't even get them to push back into a point to try to stall a cap or go save their defense radio because they're so immersed in their firefight and they think that, oh, apes stick together, apes strong. Like they think that's teamwork when in reality they're costing their team 20, 40, 60 tickets at a time. Um, it's always been an issue, but it's a much bigger issue now, in my opinion, than it was before.
To add to
Yeah,
that,
well, I just
quickly to
Go
add
ahead,
to
yeah.
that, when it comes to like, because the slower gameplay is like a thing now, you get this situation where a point will get lost, and because everyone dies way slower, you just get half your team just completely out of position. And because it takes so much longer for gunfights to finish and for people to die, it takes so much longer for all those players to like reset on the tab that's now in play, if that makes sense. It's like a added sort of consequence of the slower gameplay and the slower death rate.
I do have one thing I want to ask. Is the game on sale right now?
Yep.
Was for the weekend. I think it just
Well,
finished, didn't it?
I was looking at the Steam charts the other day, and I think we had like a plus 300% on the number of new people coming in. This is something that I've seen in so many patches of Squad, right? We get a free weekend, and suddenly we get a whole million people who come in, and they don't really understand this whole thing about like objective gameplay like it happens in Dota, right? Nobody wants to hit the stupid towers. And then people kind of figure it out, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, I gotta cap the flags. But I really think that this experience of, oh my god, everything is broken and people are suddenly like way dumber is mostly because we just have a crap ton of new players, right? I want to like bring up the Steam charts to like qualify it, but I think we're in just a massive spike of people coming in, especially people who might be fair weather friends of the game who really just come in when the updates come out. They get bored after a week or two, and hey, they'll be gone. And then we'll get back to sweaty fights over the flags where everybody knows what they're doing. But this happens at like every game, right?
If that were the case, then these issues wouldn't have started rearing their heads during the playtest. And that's when we started noticing it, and when we started calling these macro gameplay changes out was during the playtest before V6 even dropped and way before the sale happened. I've been You can ask anybody that I've talked to about this topic. I've been harping about the macro gameplay changes since playtest 1.
I don't think it's going to stay like that, though. I think right now we've got a lot of factors coming together to. I don't think it's, we have update, we have brand new mechanics where even experienced players feel lost. I think if we let it cook a little bit, it's gonna get better. I mean, that's basically the arc of every squad update. It's not so good, and then it cooks and it's better.
But why will it get better though? Because people will learn how to play together better in the new meta, and everyone will get better. So if that's the argument, then that should have always happened with pre-V6 squad, but we've just been talking about how it didn't, and people still didn't really know how to play the game. And if anything, the teamwork you have to employ now to learn the game is far more complicated than it ever was. Before it was just be in the proximity of your squad mates and you'll kill people together. Now it's like a whole lot more intensive in what you have to do.
It's hard to talk about things that haven't happened yet, but I think that's slowly going to get better. I might be wrong, but going off previous history, it will.
One thing I just played Armored Core 6, and Balteus beat the crap out of me for like 5 hours, right? And no matter what I did, except getting good, I had to keep fighting this boss, right? We're playing a really, really difficult game. And one of the issues is that it's not just about our collective skill, right, or our individual skill to make the game happen. We can lose the game based on shit that somebody else did. And it's always 49 strangers unless we have a bunch of friends. And that makes like failings and issues way more frustrating than when they were if they were just individualized, right? Way more apparent and horrible to deal with. But I think because we want this game to be the way it is, ICO or not, where we've got these objectives, we have to worry about logistics and teamwork and coordination, we have to accept the fact that we will be punished greatly if other people just don't get it. And regardless of what we do, ICO or not, there is going to be a subset of people who will never get it. And they might ruin our games. And I think that's something that we can't patch out of human brains, right? We can only teach people and show them how to do better times and try to lead the community towards better habits. But I don't really think that the ICO, in terms of the macro gameplay, is really going to drag people away from a cool firefight at tunnels because it reminds them of that Battlefield 4 map in the Metro or something, right? I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? I don't think we can mechanics our way out of this. And I think that the collective of, idea of the game is going to change because I wasn't playing Squad for like years. And then the ICO comes out and I install the game immediately for the public test universe. And then I told a bunch of friends, hey man, check this out. Lots of people, again, who are updaters or whatever are coming in. I think that we have to lead the community actively and show them how to do things like disengagement firefights. I've been able to convince people off of flags. It's a kind of a pain in the ass, but one of the things I have to do is be a little bit of an asshole. Hey man, if you don't want to listen to me, go play somewhere else, right? Go be in some other squad. I don't have the space. And maybe that's milsimi, but I end up with squads of 9 that work together all the time. Every game.
Yeah, I mean, squads of 9 that work together, that's great. But again, I'm not talking about the micro or squad level gameplay. I'm talking about the macro team level gameplay. You can get a squad of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people to work together in the ICO, but I have not been able to get the team working together as easy as I could get the team working together pre-ICO.
I'm not sure. The thing is, I wish we had data to go off of for this.
I gotta be honest with you. I never squad lead, and I was squad leading all day today, and I felt like everybody on my squads were super responsive, and did what I asked, and it was a pretty enjoyable time.
I think to
yeah,
add to this though, like what you're saying with your, I think a big part of that is the fact that you are a good squad leader, right? And that goes to like the point that when it comes to teamwork, that's always been in squad pre V6 and post. It's always been the squad leaders. Your team will have good teamwork if you have good squad leaders.
I feel like post ICO that there is more buy-in from the Blueberries when you're squad leading, though. I do think that's a change that's been made.
one of the
So-
issues that
So real quick,
one of the oh yeah, please go ahead. My bad.
sorry, just real quick. Just to kind of clarify some things, like yeah, comp community, experienced player, whatever. A lot of people are harping on the gunplay. Just to clarify for Helios, my biggest issue with the ICO is the macro, the RTS level changes that inherently came with it. I like squad. I'm a firm believer that if you're going to have an RTS, the gameplay, or not an RTS, an FPS, the gameplay should feel good. The gunplay should feel good. But I don't really play squad for the FPS. I play squad for the RTS, which is why I'm an SL main. That's why I like the competitive environment, the stratting, the game sense on the macro level. Like I play the game for that macro RTS. So like somebody that plays the game for the micro level might not see things the way that I do, but these are the changes that I've seen coming from that side of like that's why I play squad. I play squad for that macro level RTS game.
I think we kind of had roughly this conversation in one of my more toxic moods, shall we say, and I made it cry for help disguised of a joke of the first step of liking ICO is accepting that pub will always be bad. And
I don't know, Socrates. I don't know, man.
And it was a joke, but I think probably a lot of what these complaints can be addressed as is we have to figure out a way to empower squad leaders more and make it feel like it's less just herding cats. Because when you get that cat herding feeling, it's just like, no. It's made me uninstall squad before. It's just...
Oh, I'm sorry, Venom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to
Sorry,
respond
Venom.
to that question, but I just had an idea where, I mean, just hypothesis, don't shoot me down for this one, but could we do it in a way where the mechanics, like a future possible mechanic for squad leads is, let's say for a full 9-man squad, if any other 8 players in that squad is away from their squad lead by X amount of meters, say if they're literally by distance away from their SL by over 150 meters, they start getting a timer on them that counts down, and once that timer goes out, you die. So basically that would encourage all squad leads to stay close to their squad lead. Sorry, all squad mates to...
Absolutely
I don't
not.
like that.
No.
Because what if I'm running a Logi squad, right, and we're driving trucks, we're trying to get to 40,000 supplies delivered, right?
Yeah.
What about a situation where your squad lead's like, I need help here, and then another squad lead's like, I'll send some of my guys to you. It's sort of... You
Or
can't do that now either, could you?
Or the combat NG rifleman that's hunting fobs, or the hat that's hunting armor. No, absolutely not. No.
I
Yeah,
mean, a prompt would be nice, actually, like a little ping, but other than that, no.
But you can punish these people, right? Here's how you do it. You right-click their name, you click kick from squad, the guy loses his gun, and he's now wandering around with no spawns in the middle of the game looking stupid, right?
Yeah,
and
I love kicking people. It's my favorite thing to do, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, and not only that, but then he gets a warning where he has to join another squad or he gets kicked out of the server. And if the server happens to be full of responsive squad leaders, which is how we get this RTS gameplay to really go forward, right? He's just going to get bounced around until he eventually gets ejected from the server. And that's where, and squad leaders have the power to do that. We're just not using it. And I think,
I mean-
obviously, you and I, Campo, are using it, right? But most squad leaders aren't.
Nobody wants to be that guy.
Yeah.
Oh no, like you can ask anybody that has played in a squad with me that's not part of SigTac. Like I'll be the first to kick somebody that's not listening or not doing something productive for the squad, especially if they're not listening.
I'm trying to not make a comp player joke, but you're making it so hard.
No, make it, make all the jokes.
But no, I would agree. It's just I don't know. It we're trying to change player behavior, and that's a quick way to want to pound your head against the wall. And I just don't. I can identify the issue of squad leaders feel like they're cat herding way too often, but I don't have the foggiest clue how to fix it that won't just introduce new problems.
Don't cat herd. Kick them
I-
out.
I do.
Do what I say or get out. I don't cat
No.
herd. Do what I say
No,
or
I
leave.
actually do have an answer for that, and it's something that I've talked about multiple times, and that is address the spawn mechanics in the game. We can have
You're
a whole
not wrong.
conversation. We can have a whole conversation on how to do that, whether it's limiting the amount of fobs you can have on the map, making it so that squad leads can, like, these are all ideas that have been thrown around. These aren't my ideas. I don't agree with all of them, but making it so that squad leads can make it so that their squad can only spawn at one or two different fobs or anything else. But addressing the spawn
Yes.
mechanics in the game will go so much further to fostering teamwork than
Yeah.
anything else.
My only I like just blanket agree with that. My only problem with that is just increasing black screen time will never go over well. I just by that, and I mean increasing spawn times or increasing the amount of times people are down. It's such a hard balance to strike for people to not just look at the black screen and instantly check out, because frankly we live in the year of shorts. You've got about 90 seconds of their attention and that's it.
Well, I never
Well-
said increase spawn times. I said limit fobs on the map. Instead of being able to put down 6 different fucking habs at one time, or even more sometimes, what if it's only 2 or 3? What if there are only 2 or 3 fobs on the map? That's going to make it so that SLs are forced to use their rallies more. It's going to make it so that there are less spawns on the map that squad members can just randomly spawn on if they're bored. It's going to make it so that the fob spam mechanic is no longer really a thing, because you can't have three fobs around every point. Like, there are a lot of different things with spawn mechanics that we could talk about and do, but right now the biggest perpetrator for the run die spawn mentality is, oh, I've got all of these different teleportation devices basically around the map. Whatever, it doesn't matter if I die.
Really
Totally
quick.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really quick here. It looks like the comments, multiple people are saying, let's see. Sexy Flander says, give SLs the power to select where their spawn, to select where their squad can spawn. Anything more than that, and
Based.
the power to kick people is just going to make the game suck. And he says, yep, and allow a page up if they want to spawn somewhere else in case someone wants to spawn elsewhere to grab an abandoned logi or something.
Based.
Wait, I'm kind of confused. Isn't that just like a rally point?
No, he's
Based
saying
on
that
time.
if there's a certain number of habs on the map, your squad leader gets to pick one that you can use, and if you want to go somewhere else, you got to ask him, just like you got to ask to pick up a
Claim a
vehicle,
vehicle,
to claim a vehicle.
Ooh, that's juicy.
Yep.
That's based.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. OW, I will say credit to OWI. They have said time after time again, squad leaders run their squads how they want. If you don't like it, make your own. And I just guess that needs to be in the feedback channel where, squad leaders have the option to lock spawns. That's an excellent example of a mechanic where I struggled to see the bad part, because if you don't want to spawn with your squad, who cares? what you think.
Right.
Yeah.
Real quick here,
One-
genuine. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll come back.
Yep. Genuine Wiener Pog says, any thoughts on vehicles being spawn points?
No.
No, we don't need more teleportation devices in the game. If anything, we need less.
Yes. That's the word. One thing I want to say about this whole mechanics thing, right? And people not liking it is people are going to want to come in and play to like a ever decreasing denominator, right? You've got comp squad players like Swooper, and then you've got my dumbass who just plays this game in pubs, right? It's always the bar's always going to come down to a certain point. And you have to say, right, as a community and as a game, how far down do you want to go? Do you want people to just be able to play the game solo and, not really have punishments for it? And if they start going below that bar, how do you want to start twisting their arm to get them to, behave or leave? And of course, people are always going to start being annoyed when you tell them that they can't do things or you ask them to do things that they don't want to do, right, for a video game. Always. There's always going to be belly aching, right? If we didn't, we'd have spawning on flags like Battlefield 2 style, right? We took that away, right? We'd have, the ability to get infinite snipers. We took that away, right? And I don't want to say like get good, but I think we have to accept from any of these changes that we make, ICO or not, spawning or not, what amount of belly aching we're willing to just say, yeah, that's the game we want to have. That's the environment that we're fostering, and you need to get along or like complain until you quit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
There needs to be a vision.
I can agree with that. It's just at which side of the vision do we listen to? Like one of my biggest problems with most of these anti versus pro ICO arguments, and I say most, not nearly all, but a good chunk of them is people that intimately know almost every facet of this game arguing with people that have 200 hours in the game and barely know how the ticket economy works. Like that's one of the biggest things is it seems like people are so dismissive of the experienced players that know the macro micro everything about the game to a very intimate level as just like, oh, you just want to run and gun and go play cod. But like I feel like most of the points that we bring up about actual gameplay issues, whether it's ICO or not, tend to just get dismissed because we're, part of the comp community or because like, oh well, you've been playing this game the wrong way the whole time. And like, dude, you have 200 hours in game. You barely know how the ticket economy works. How can you tell me that I'm playing wrong? And I think that's where a lot of the, I don't want to say toxicity because there's toxicity on both sides, but I think that's kind of where the hostility from the anti-ICO side comes is because most of the people arguing anti-ICO are wildly more experienced than a lot of the people arguing the pro ICO. And it creates this environment where it's like you're telling a master welder that he's welding a joint wrong when you just got out of welding school.
I think in a sense, comp is always going to feel disempowered simply because they aren't most of the people that play the game.
Yeah. I want to.
And that's
Oh, go ahead, Swooper.
that is agreeable. Like we're not most of the people that play the game, but on average, we are the most experienced. And
I would argue
that know it.
I would argue it's more because there's no like really well-known voices behind the comp community. Like you go to like any other game like CS, Siege, whatever, the comp community is still the minority in those games, but because they've got like weight behind them, people listen to them. Whereas in squad, like the average squad player, there's no comp squad players that they know the names of that they can like say, yeah, that guy probably knows what he's talking about.
Well, the average squad player doesn't even know what comp squad is.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't even know what comp squad is. So when they hear comp, they just laugh.
Like most of them just envision like team deathmatch on Korra. Like they think that we're just like playing team deathmatch. Like they don't realize that we're playing the actual game. We're playing squad at a very high level, but they don't know that. And I know this because I've had plenty of conversations with people that we're like, oh fuck comp, this, that, and the other. Go play another game. Like go play CS:GO if you want to play comp. Like, and then I get
And
into a
it's
conversation with them and I explain like what comp squad is, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And I think that's most of the squad community, and it comes from mostly comes from I think the lack of um, representation that Comp Squad has in the general comp community, whether that's from OWI, from like high level streamers, from anybody. Like people don't watch comp games because most of them don't know it exists, and the ones that do know it exists think that all of us are just like super toxic and we don't actually play squad. We just play team deathmatch on Quora.
in a sense though, there is a slight ring of truth of, are you really playing the same game as those dudes?
150%. We're just playing it at an extremely high and coordinated
High
level.
level. Yeah.
Like it's still the same game. We're still playing AAS squad. We're still doing everything that should be happening in a squad game. Just instead of somebody super fobbing 600 meters off of any point, we're actually playing the game. Like in my opinion, at least, comp squad is the pinnacle of how squad should be played. It's not a bunch of Twitch shooters running around. It's actually quite the contrary. Like most comp teams, there are a couple where like they have really good shooters and they can get away with that, especially against worse teams. But like most comp teams are actually very slow, methodical, and well thought out in their positioning, in their rally placement, and their fob placement. Like everything has been thought out and is methodical down to a T for most of these teams. And like while it might not be the same game that the super fobbers are playing, because in my opinion they're not playing squad correctly anyway, but it is squad. Like in every facet it is absolutely, it's just a game of squad.
Really quick.
I wanted.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Helios.
Sorry.
Uh,
No,
guys-
I've talked too much. I talked too much.
Oh no, by all means, Helios, because yeah, this is your first time here, and you have a really fresh perspective, and I think everyone should hear about it.
Yeah, no, Helios has articulated a lot of the points I'd like to make. Just way more articulate than I did, so feel free.
Nice.
I just wanted to disagree with that ICO is like a junior welder telling a master welder that you're welding wrong. And I think the people who are telling you that are really stupid. But the fact that that argument happens is really stupid. And because that's not what's happening, right? What's happening is that, and this is a really big deal, right? OWI made a game that evolved in a certain way. Personally, I didn't like the way Squad went, and I stopped playing it. I went back to Project Reality. OWI said specifically, we don't like the way this game's going. We're going to write a bunch of new mechanics. And a bunch of the people who were playing the game for 4,000 hours said, dude, what the hell are you doing? The gameplay we have is fine. When you take it away from the pub game, it runs like this beautiful engine. And the developers said, listen, we're going to develop something that's going to work in a certain way, that's going to go towards the dream that we have for this IP. And a lot of people are saying, hey man, this new thing is the way that it always should have been, and that's perfectly okay. But at the same time, a lot of other people are also saying, hey, the game that we had before was perfectly fine. And even though I really didn't like Squad at 5.0, I think that the game that people played and enjoyed was a legitimate game and it was fine. But the thing is, we really got to walk away from trying to tell each other that you were totally wrong. I just love ICO way more than I would have ever loved any other version of Squad. And I like the direction it's going in, and I want to try to teach people ways to appreciate the game and have more fun with it, because I want more awesome games of ICO Squad. But I totally appreciate and really empathize with people who feel like they're controlling like they're controlling themselves while drunk the first time, but in the second person. It feels awful to like have this thing ripped away from you. It happened when like they updated Stellaris a million times and suddenly like it's a new game, right? Or when Legacy of the Void came out and StarCraft 2 was like totally changed forever, right? It happens all the time. So I want to really, to anybody listening, please stop telling ICO enjoyers or anti-ICO enjoyers that their method is their gameplay preference is not valid. Because that's not what this argument is really about, and it's just making this whole thing toxic.
I think kind of to play off that is a reason why we see a lot of the disconnect is it's like I look at some of the criticisms and it's my overall impression is like, of course you hate ICO. For you, it changed things that were never a problem. And it's just kind of like, okay, like there's not really how you can't fix a problem with somebody that doesn't think it's a problem. You just kind of got to walk away. It is sometimes how I feel. I'm trying not to. I want to try to keep a more open mind, but it's very hard to say to a limited extent that it's just like deal. Because in a sense, it's like we're never going to agree because for you, this was never a problem.
For me,
So-
the core problem is when I played some 5.1 squad earlier today, and when I play 6.0, I feel like I'm playing two completely different video games. They just, at this point, other than the fact that they have the framework of like HABs and vehicles, they're different games. And that's why there's a disconnect. People were playing one video game, and now there's been this big update, and they're playing a different game. And there's no other game like the game they were playing that they can pivot to. So
Yeah,
that's why there's the disconnect.
Another thing, like just in response to Helios, you kind of touched on the argument without saying it, or saying it in less words, rather. People want to say like original vision for Squad, going back to the original vision. This is the vision that the devs always had for Squad. This, that, the other. Like, there are very few, if any, original devs left on the team. First, second, we've already talked about it, brought it up, and everything else on this podcast in previous episodes, but we have a very long, very well written explanation of what the original vision from Merlin, who was the original creator and CEO of OWI, of what their vision of Squad was. And we also have the community poll that was taken in 2019 asking the community what direction they want to see the development of Squad go. TLDR, it was Milsim or nah, and it basically came down to, we want a faster paced, teamwork oriented game. All in all, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, based off of all of those things, V5, with some minor changes that could have been made to spawn mechanics and other things in the game, was the original vision for what Squad should have been. So, and that's kind of where the disconnect comes as well, is if people want to say like, oh, they're taking this, to more like what they originally wanted the game to be, and I think that that's disingenuous and a rewrite of history, honestly.
I also think that it's impossible to understand fully the minds of people that we aren't. We aren't the people who voted in that poll. We aren't Merlin.
I
We
am
aren't the devs.
I am people that voted in that poll, but
Oh, well, okay. But yeah, but I mean, we also don't know exactly like what Merlin saw because I don't think he was around when 5.0 came out, right? What I'm saying, my point for this is that, hey, let's not use other people's history in order to try to justify ICO or not, because I think that it's not healthy. It's not a healthy discussion because it's an argument from some kind of authority, like a fake authority, right?
Yep.
We're the community now. The developers now are the developers now. Now we have to decide where we want to go, both as the community and for the developers making the game and maintaining the game that they want to see. Do they want to see this game? Right now, the people who are actively working on it, they say they want to see what it looks like in ICO. And a bunch of people in the community say, I agree with that. And a whole bunch of people in the community say, I really don't agree with that. I think a big contention is that this came out as a patch and not as a standalone game. But for the developers, they're the ones maintaining and working on this standalone game, so they do get a little bit of say in it. But it is also a little bit, I can see why people are like, but hey man, I don't really have the ability to leave, right? I kind of just got to adapt. And you're really twisting my arm here because, especially for competitive players, we just got good out of all of the issues that you're trying to fix with the mechanics. And I think a lot of the changes with ICO really kind of left you in the dust as, competitive squad players, right? It wasn't your problem. And they're like throwing out the framework that you built a legacy on to answer a community that you largely left as a competitive squad players, right? For this like Pika squad, in order to try to build something else to get to another destination that maybe you already got to. And I think that is really frustrating. And I feel for you, right? And I think that everybody who is a pro ICO person should really learn empathy for the people who put in a lot of time for this game, right? Even if you disagree and OWI ends up disagreeing with their opinions about the direction, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, especially because it's like ultimately at the end of the day, those are the dudes that are going to lead the blueberries. If they just opt out, game's done. It's just going to attrition and die. It's going to exact same problem as PR. If you don't have that base in there to guide the incoming people, your game's on life support. It's just how long until it dies.
Real quick here, I know that Husky has a dying question. Husky, I haven't forgotten about you, so this is a perfect time to transition to your question right now. Husky's question is the following. What do you and the guys in the podcast think about the fact that OWI mostly fight up against all the experienced players with the meta changes and not bug fixing stuff, while they're the backbone with all their servers and administration and seeding work?
Yeah, I mean, I've brought this up multiple times in multiple episodes of this podcast. Is like the things that we were actually asking for, bug fixes. Like, why are 3 round burst M4s still silent? That's just one example, right? Like legacy bug fixes that we've been asking for years, content updates. We still have 2 completely broken game modes that could be really fun game modes. We still have, you know, maps that you can clip through the bottom and fall through the world if you bipod in the wrong place. Like these things are things that we've been asking for. We've been asking for content updates, which we got some. I will give them that. We got some. Um, we've been asking for a lot of different things for a lot of different years. And then instead of doing any of that, they push out this update that before the playtest, literally nobody was asking for. Not a single person was asking for this that was still playing squad. So that's also a huge contention with the experienced player base is it feels like we are never listened to. And then when something out of the blue and a full 180 switch happens without any of these other things being addressed, it just kind of feels like F you, we're going to do what we want to anyway type message. And that's, I think, a big frustration in the experienced community is that.
I totally feel for you with that one, especially when you brought up the fact that you guys stayed with squad despite everything. Because, for me, before ICO, I just said, yeah, fuck this game, right? And I left, right? I said, I don't like it, and I walked away. You guys stuck with it, and then the developers, appealed to me and not you. And I think that's also a really important piece of information here for why a lot of the people are super frustrated with this change that doesn't get spoken about enough. Because I know there's a big PR community that doesn't play this game anymore, that walked away and talked a whole bunch of crap about like the mechanics and the way that it was going and the gunplay and stuff. And then suddenly, bam, now we're all getting invited back. And you guys are like, but hey, man, I've been seeding this server for the past like 5 years, you know?
Not just seating, but
I mean,
a lot
an
of
example,
like a lot of the experienced players, they are the clan leaders, they are the server owners, they are the administrators, they are the ones that are teaching the player base how to play squad. Like it's not even the comp community. Like anybody that knows me or my history knows that I've always had this like extremely large rivalry with the Seventh Rangers. Like I not don't get me started on it anyway, but like when I have the leader of Seventh Rangers sending me DMs saying like you're absolutely right, this is bullshit, and we're finding common ground where we could never find common ground in the game before, like it just shows that it's not just a comp community thing. It's a widespread experienced community thing, and it just makes it feels bad, man. Like that's it.
Yeah, no, I can sympathize with that, but I would say it's not necessarily a squad thing. I think it's always the eternal battle of community versus corporate, in a sense, just playing out. I just, yeah, that's really, I guess, kind of my only input on that. I don't feel tapped in enough to the squad community to like reliably say anything beyond that. Apologies for the interruption.
The biggest thing, just a question, because I'm relatively newer to the game in terms of like how many hours I have. When do people argue that the game started to turn into like the run and gun Call of Duty style game
I
and
think it was.
it left its roots? Like, when do people actually think that started happening?
I don't know, but I do know that there were a whole bunch of YouTube videos that were talking about it, and the idea was that it was also spreading out to like PR as well. Just not only like a criticism of squad's mechanics, but kind of like a general malaise where people seem to be less interested in kind of these slower, methodical games that PR used to be, and were more interested in like the lone wolf running and gunning and just kind of clicking on heads thing. And squad people pointed out certain parts of Squad's mechanics that were facilitating that. I think it was at least a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years.
See, that's interesting, because while I've like basically 500 of my 1,000 odd hours are in the last 2 months. When I first played the game was back in like 2018, and the game, I don't remember the game feeling that different back then, in like my memories from playing it. So I've never really actually understood where this argument that the game, unless it was like before my time, like 2016, 2017, really like comes from. Like, to me, it's always felt like the game's played this way.
I honestly, I would think it was more a matter of all of a sudden the players changed, and that's why the mechanics became COD, really, than anything else, if that makes sense. It's, we're talking like a really long time ago. Basically, nobody's going to agree, and everybody's going to have a slightly different opinion. But I think Helios summed it up pretty well. Is just like this general feeling of, oh, well, nobody wants to do tactics anymore.
Really quick.
So what is? Go ahead, Scraggs.
Sorry, I was just gonna read out Husky's comment here. He adds on to the question why we're here still. In my case, I was about to delete all my mods and discords and just not care anymore on V6, but I know that thousands use my mods to train how to play squad, such as helicopter, vehicle armor mod, etc. So I take the pain and keep it up, because I don't see much other people creating good training and caster mods, so I know my mods keep up some of the good gameplay that will help many servers.
So back to just kind of what I was saying, Husk is absolutely right. Like that's a huge thing, and that's something that a lot of people are doing. It's not just him, but a lot of the experienced people in the community, like keeping servers up, continuing to run them, even though they don't like the new date, stuff like that. But the the thing that irks me the most is when people say like, "Oh, the game became COD." Like nobody plays it like COD, and we never have. I mean, I'm sure there are some blueberries that do try to play it like COD, and most of them get shit on. But none of us are COD players. If we were COD players, we'd be playing COD. Um, and it's mostly the comp players that are getting told that, when the comp players are the ones least likely to be playing this game like it's Call of Duty. Um, it's just It's one of those straw
People
man
just
arguments.
get mad that there's other people better than them. It's just facts. People got sick and tired of coming on the weekends and getting their head clicked up because there's other people who put more time into the game and they're just better than them. That's just it. There isn't any, like in a lot of games, right? There's like skill based matchmaking. So you are placed with people who are in a similar skill tier. In a game like Squad, that doesn't exist. So you have people who are 1 hour into the game, and you have people that are 10,000 hours into the game in the same server. So that sort of headbutting is always going to happen in a game like that, in like a game like Squad.
Would you say it's a?
I don't.
Sorry, Kev. Just to clarify what you mean, are you saying that this is a skill issue?
No, I'm. What I'm saying is that the. Oh well, I mean, in terms of the blueberries, like the new people complaining about people playing COD, yeah, it's 100% a skill issue. It's just they just don't want to put in as much effort and time to learn how to play the game the way that the comp players play it.
I
That
wouldn't
just
even
takes
say don't want to. I would just say haven't yet. Like some of them
sure,
might.
sure. But my point is, overall, there's just a very large skill gap between the high tier and the new players, and you're never
I
going to.
don't think that. I don't think that that's what this argument's really about.
But it is.
Um,
It is 100% because what the argument is that people are upset that people are running and gunning and playing like Call of Duty. Nobody plays this game like Call of Duty. It's impossible to play this game like Call of Duty.
but I don't think that's the argument that's happening, right? Because
It
people
is.
say, hold on, because
Let
I
'em talk,
think
let 'em
what the
talk.
argument's happening is that people say, hey, ICO sucks, right? These guns are weird, right? And then people who like ICO try to say, hey man, these mechanics work if you do these things and you just want to play COD where you can run and gun. Right, and then the person says, but hey, wait a minute, I'm not running and gunning. I'm used to playing this game from this very competitive way, and, I want to just have these mechanics that work in the way that I like. And then the person who enjoys ICO says, I really enjoy this slow and methodical, kind of unrealistically motivated suppression and fire and maneuver mechanic, right? And your complaint about it, trying to bring it back to take this away, is because you just want the game to go back to being Call of Duty, which is a double-sided misunderstanding, right? The competitive players are not trying to say, and I mean specifically the people who are playing who don't like ICO and are playing competitively. The competitive players are not trying to bring the game back to Call of Duty, and the people who enjoy ICO for the gameplay mechanic that it brings are not trying to have the developers make some kind of nerf to the competitive players for the sake of their bad kill death ratio, right? I think that is a bad misrepresentation of both sides of the argument, and it is making us, go backwards and get at each other's throats, right? People enjoy ICO specifically for ICO's mechanics, and people enjoy not ICO specifically for the opposite of the things that ICO brought, regardless of their commitment to being, to having good teamwork or something like that, right? I think we need, seriously, to stop with these ad hominem attacks of, hey, you're just trying to play COD, you're kind of some ugh run and gun guy, or hey, you're just bad. That's leading us absolutely nowhere. The question is,
I don't think that's what we're saying. I think we're
but
just
that's
talking.
how people are interpreting it, right?
Maybe, I guess if you're.
I don't know. I can't lie. The amount of times you say something against like the ICO that's fairly valid, and someone says go back to playing Call of Duty or Battlefield, like I definitely think it is very much a thing. I don't know.
Or the popular one lately has been skill issue. They say skill issue in capitals to you. You still have to laugh at that, don't you?
Which is interesting because it's the complete opposite, right? Like the problem has always been that it's a skill issue the other way around, and that's why
Exactly.
people complain.
So is liking ICO a skill issue?
No.
It's liking ICO
No.
is a skill issue that we keep getting told in mainly in the squad Discord, in the community Discord, in the V6 discussion channels and squad general channels.
Yeah, but he said it was the other way around. Wouldn't that make liking ICO a skill issue?
No.
I'm finding it if you speak up against ICO, the pro ICO guys sort of say it's a skill issue on our behalf that we don't like it and we need to get better. But
They think it's a skill issue because people aren't adapting.
this might be biased from like someone who's anti-ICO and supports it, but like I find that people who are anti-ICO will actually bring up points about like why it's bad, whereas pro-ICO will just turn to like saying you're a COD player rather than actually
all
all of the time bringing out reasons that it's good.
You can just say that on both sides. So.
there's
Oh, it
mixtures of
definitely
that
happens on both
everywhere.
sides, but I think it's far more skewed towards the pro-ICOs.
Which one do you like
players
more?
doing it. What do you
Wh-
wait?
Which
I'm
one do you like
pro.
more?
I'm anti-ICO, so
I'm gonna say you're gonna get, as a human being, you're gonna hear the opposite opinion to you way louder than the pro opinion, and I don't think we have the empirical data to back it up. What I am gonna say is that the people we need to, as a collective community, shit on the people who are being obnoxious, regardless. And I'm guilty of this shit, right? I got sucked into
Guilty.
it too. I'm not perfect. But I think as a community, we all need to stop being fucking obnoxious to each other because it's not helping us make the game that we all want to play, or at least get the game that the OWI developers want to make in the end, right? Which might be different now. Right. I think we need to stop. And a big part of the problem is that people just want to be mean. They want to see the people who are on the other side of the fence get upset. So we say things like skill issue or go back to COD, or you just like are bad at clicking heads and you're just happy that you can shoot that nobody can see the gun now. We're all shitting on each other. We're all squad players here, right? I think that everybody needs to take a chill pill and stop doing that. And we need to collectively beat people up who do that, regardless of which side we're on of them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. You can. Oh, they've all been deleted now because I got banned from the Discord. But we're not going to talk about that. But before I got banned, you could literally go read any of my comments. I'm in the same path as you. Like I wasn't getting sucked into that nearly as much. Almost every single one of my messages was as respectful as I could make it, trying to bring up good points. But um, it just I don't know. The whole community split is very frustrating, especially because like it's really hard to find. And I think this is going to Campo's point. It has been extremely hard, even as somebody that isn't throwing around like skill issue, get good, this, that, and the other. Like it's been extremely hard to find a respectful conversation with anybody that is pro ICO. Um, and then like even when you can find those respectful conversations, you then find out that the person has 25 hours in the game and has played 2 hours of the ICO. So it's like, I mean, the points that you're trying to bring up aren't really working because what you're saying is objectively wrong about the game. So it's been very hard to have an actual constructive conversation. So I do appreciate both of you guys being here because I'm enjoying it quite a lot.
It depends if you're talking about your version of the game, though, or their version of the game.
They're okay. Hold on.
That's a
Like
big problem
I,
with talking past each other, though. Is like
I say this in real life, in politics, and everything else. Like the whole your truth, my truth thing, I fucking hate it. Truth is objective. Like the game is the game. The general premise of the game is objectively the same. It doesn't matter who you are that's playing it. Like in Squad, you have a system that is a win-loss determinator. You have objectives to play for. You have the tickets that determine whether you win or lose. You have all of the different aspects of armor and mortars and infantry and helis and everything else. Like there is no like what game you're playing versus what game they're playing. Like you're playing Squad. That's yeah. Granted, somebody that's making super fob events and milsim one life events, like they're not playing the same game, but that's not Vanilla Squad. Vanilla Squad, there is a very clear cut game there. So I disagree with the it depends on whether you're playing the game that you're playing or playing the game that they're playing because squad is squad. Objectively, squad is squad. It doesn't matter who you are. The game is the game, and the mechanics and the goals of the game are the same for everybody. It just matters whether you care about that game or if you just want to play for immersive gunfights.
Really quick, I just want to chime in because this actually relates a bit to question number 11 on the stream here. I'll read it out and then we could just carry on with this conversation. What is your opinion on OWI changing fundamental parts of a finished product 3 years after release? Do you think that this is a positive direction for the future of Squad?
I would be fine with it if they would have addressed all of the other things that we've been asking them to address for years. If they fixed all the bugs that we've been asking for, if they gave us content and they really felt like this was the only thing they could do to keep the game alive, then sure, experiment with stuff. I would have liked to see a more solid playtest. The problem with the playtests is that they changed so many different things between each playtest that it was really hard to tell what was the same and what was different. And then every single feedback form was completely different from each other. So it was hard to give constructive feedback that was even sort of consistent. So I would have liked to see a longer and more precise playtesting phase. And I think them rushing to put it out was a really bad idea. But I mean, changing the game after 3 years is one thing, but changing the game after 3 years without addressing any of the other concerns that the community's been harping on for years is where I kind of draw that line.
And sort of how high they started up in, everything, the ADS timer, the sway, it's all turned up to, 20. If they started off lower first, and then, we could have given positive feedback in public matches, and then they could have tuned it to that instead of having it. They had it so far turned up, and then now they're starting to turn it back down. Why don't we go the other direction? Why don't we start off low and then bring up the ADS sway a little bit if we have to, or bring up the time it takes to ADS and stuff like that. They went the wrong way about it. They bring it out and it was way too much. Now they're starting to tune it down, and they'll do it again soon too. They'll tune it down even more in the next couple of weeks.
Cynical big brain answers, they started high and then so they could tune it low and you could praise them for fixing the game.
Yeah, and why not start low and then tune it higher later on if they have to? It would be perfectly fine. We would have found a middle ground in an instant, pretty much. We would have found this infighting in the community would never have happened.
But to kind of address a question, I went over it a little bit earlier, I believe, but not to encourage OWI to do yet another asset flip. Cough, cough. There is a legitimate thing that even as an ICO enjoyer, I recognize this is it was a 180 enough that with such an established community and such established community servers, there should have been a legitimate conversation if this should have been Squad 2. I don't think I question the sincerity of people that think otherwise, no matter the side, because it's like, yeah, this was a 180 from previous gameplay. I don't think anybody's gonna try to seriously dispute that.
I don't think it's going to be a Squad 2. There won't be a Squad 2 for a long time. The amount of money that otherwise wasted on other projects that haven't gone very well. I mean, they need to bring out more content and sell more copies of Squad. They have to sell more copies of Squad. This is a game that makes them the most money. If they work on a Squad 2 now, it'll come out in 5 years from now, and it might be too late.
I want to bring up a new question that's somewhat related to what we're talking about. So basically, there's a lot of arguments that splitting the player base would be a terrible idea. I personally believe that this update and what was before should just be 2 different game modes within the game, or whatnot. But people would say they're splitting the player base, so I just want to know what people think about that.
They're splitting the dev work, really. That's pretty much why I think it wouldn't be a terrible thing, but it's just going to be a non-starter because corporate's going to look at that and go, no. I mean, because in a sense, you would need almost 2 different dev teams for that.
I don't know if it's really. I wouldn't really call it disingenuous, but I can still feel why people got the ick from it. This kind of game development cycles are ridiculously long and extremely expensive to justify. So otherwise, you end up looking like Blizzard, right? And nobody wants to do that with Overwatch 2. And it just feels silly, and then it just feels like a patch anyway, and then your community's divided in half unless you cut down a bunch of servers and their licenses, right? So they released this giant patch because they wanted to change the direction of the game, and it's a huge directional change, right? Is this something that happens really often in the game industry? Yeah. But the thing is it the direction that we want to go? I think isn't just a question for Squad, but I think is also a really big question for like this whole games as a service kind of thing that we've got going on right now with a lot of titles. You know what I mean? Where titles are expected to last because of how much effort they go into the development. These titles have to last like decades, and developers don't really have the ability to make sequels to change gameplay mechanics like this, right? And even when they do make the sequels, departures from gameplay mechanics like that are often still really poorly received, and the company gets punished for it because there's a financial penalty for them to spend all that time developing something as a new title rather than as a patch. So it's tricky, right? Because this is again how these people eat lunch. So there's a lot of I don't want to give in to like, oh, they just didn't want to do it because there's money involved, they were too lazy or whatever. It's really difficult to determine whether or not they made the right choice. And at the end of the day, they still, as developers, I think have the right to make the game they want to make. I said that when I walked away from Squad, and now I'm saying it again when I'm walking back.
Really quick here, thank you, Helios, too. Flanders says the following. He says, letting server owners choose is the only win-win situation here. Keep it as is or revert back and it's a win-lose. Find a middle ground and it's a lose-lose. Let people choose and it's a win-win.
I mean, yeah, I kind of agree to an extent. I don't think base game really can support that because of, like they were mentioning, like that's two different dev teams that they would need to keep bug fixes, keep updated content. Like, let's say they come out with a completely new faction, a completely new map, they would have to do it and optimize it for both versions of the game at that point. I do think, however, that if they can give us a tournament branch until X date, I don't see any reason why they can't just leave the tournament branch up so that if people want to play custom events on V5, they can. I don't know, but I don't think that splitting the dev team like that would be beneficial for anybody at this point. And I don't think that they're going to revert back because they did, like, I will give it to the devs. They did a lot of work to get this update out, and they probably thought it was going to be received a lot better than it was. They're not going to just axe all of that work. Like, that's a waste of time, a waste of money, a waste of energy, and it's just not going to happen. So I think the only way that we can move forward is by finding a middle ground somewhere where you still have the type of like slow drawn out gunfights that you have, but still making it fun for the FPS or not, yeah, FPS aspect of the game. Um, I don't think that that'll be a lose lose. I think that we can find a middle ground where everybody will be happy and where comp can still be a thing without it just being a turtle fest for the entire match.
So that, I guess that brings me back to that one first question about the hotfix with the percentages of the weapons sway and all that. Like, I guess first question about that hotfix is, are you guys satisfied with those percentages? The second follow-up question to that is, what other changes would you like to see? And I guess maybe throw a number on the percentages on those, on additional changes you guys want to see in the future.
I'll let other people answer, but I just want to say I think for weapon sway and recoil it needs to be at least minus 50% of what it is now.
Yeah, it's I think they don't do anything about the ADS timing, but they did reduce the sway by 10%. That's not enough. I think them making the arming distance like 10 meters, is it, for lats? That's a joke. It should be way further than that. They're only doing that because the sway of the lat and hat is so bad that you miss a lot of shots as AT. So they actually need to fix the sway on the lat and hat, and then they can ink and bring back the arming distance to a proper arming distance, because 10 meters is a joke.
So
I
play devil's
go ahead.
advocate, just real quick, to play devil's advocate with the whole lat hat argument, It's a huge gameplay change, but for the most part,
Definitely.
those numbers are actually somewhat realistic. Of
Inside
course,
here.
would you shoot an RPG from 10 meters? No. Can you shoot an RPG in real life from 10 meters? Absolutely. So, like, I don't know. It makes it a little bit easier for AT players to land shots. And it is realistic arming distances if you want to argue the realism side of it. I don't really have an opinion on that until I see how it plays.
Has
But
anyone tried it in game? Do they get
To be
damaged at all by
fair,
shooting it
to
from
be
meters?
fair, I played like maybe 3 hours today. I didn't see a single instance of it actually having an effect on the vehicles.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
It
I
happened
haven't
to me.
seen an instance.
It happened to me.
I also
I
feel
was
like though.
commanding.
Sorry, go on.
I
Go
was
on.
commanding an LAV. I tried to run somebody over, and he bumped me on the nose within 15 meters. That would not have happened in the last patch. Me trying to blitzkrieg through this guy, totally not effective anymore. Because even though I closed the distance and got within the old arming distance, it didn't matter. Because he still got the shot off. So I think it's huge in my opinion. But Met TC dependent, right? Terrain and circumstances are going to
Yeah.
make that more or less of a deal, right?
I mean, it did sort of need to happen, didn't it? Because vehicles were OP, are still OP. They are so overpowered since this ICO update. So maybe the armor distance does make sense in a way. Sort of did need to happen, but I don't know. Being 10 meters is crazy close, and that's what I don't really like it very much. But the way the vehicles are at the moment, it sort of makes sense in a way.
I don't like arming distance simply because it discouraged the tactic of hugging among vehicle crews, which encouraged them being aggressive around point. That's really my main bone to pick with it.
My general feeling with the ICO right now that I've just kind of accepted is that I've never played this game before, which is not true, obviously, but I've never played this game before. I have to learn everything from how to aim, how to move around, and how to walk. And I'm gonna experiment and try to figure out what I'm doing. And I don't really believe that I have played enough rounds with enough guns, with enough games to formulate an opinion on where or not the stats are. And they still keep changing them. So like I don't know, man. I wanna feel I'm okay with a lot of discomfort in the way the game feels. And I want to give it more time to see if I can like adapt to it and then learn it. But then like they drop a hot fix, they change it a little bit. Um, I don't think that, in my opinion, I can give an opinion on whether or not it's good right now, and I want more time to learn it before I say anything. You know.
You won't for a while either because they're going to continue to bring out hot patches for it. For the next couple of weeks, I guarantee it because there's still big complaint that the 10% sway isn't enough. It's hardly even noticeable in game. I reckon they'll bring out more hot patches and fix it.
yeah,
As an ICO enjoyer, I do feel comfortable about saying a couple things about it. I played about 3 hours, just mostly machine gunner. I will say the machine gun changes were needed, and they do show. The machine guns feel way more just usable, more lethal at kind of close and medium ranges. I think that's good. As far as the sway, I like it because I think it took a little bit of the bite off of ICO. Just a little ranch on it. You know what I mean? It My biggest problem with that is I'm concerned ICO is the sway from ICO is going to be effectively just attrition into nothing. And if we keep getting a 10% every patch is kind of my feeling. But overall, I like 6.1. The drivers of vehicles being suppressed was a moment. I didn't even quite realize. It's just like, why? Toss that. I'd like arming distance to go back to the way it was. But I do definitely feel like the AT changes were needed without question.
What was the old armor distance in pre ICO? Was it 20 meters?
It depends.
Completely dependent.
It's a good 30 to 50 wild meters.
Yeah, so that was needed.
Depending on the
That
weapon.
was fine pre ICO, but at ICO at the moment, the way that the Latin hats or just any AT sways and needs to be the 10 meters really. Bring that fear back into vehicle players again. Can't just rush in with a vehicle and expect to kill 30 people and waltz out of the cap. You need to have fear. There's infantry around you and lats around you.
I don't think the lat changes are going to be a big deal, but I think hat changes are going to be a big deal because they dropped the Gustav to fucking 10 meters like the rest of it. And the N-Law is now down to 20. So that's just oof. Rip urban IFV.
See, I'm okay with that only for the fact that if you're, because I think the Gustav was 42 meters before. If you're 20 meters from a Vic, it's gonna be a lot harder to cause you to miss that shot than it would be at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 meters. So it'll make it so that hat players pay attention to their positioning a bit more and try to hunt Vix a little bit closer. The problem with the way that Hat was playing before was you could have a perfect shot lined up on a Vic, and then a random ass 50 cal from 1,000 meters away just flew over your head. We all know about stray rounds; it's been happening forever. But a random ass 50 cal from 1,000 meters away flies over your head, causes the aim punch right when you go to take the shot, and you just wasted your tandem round and missed. And that was one of the reasons why Vics were so OP, was because any sort of anything was causing people to miss these shots.
Yeah.
So I think it might be good. It might make hat players think about where they're at a little bit more and play closer to the VIX. But to answer the question three, like totally from my perspective, my opinion is 10% feels like a lot more than I thought it would. I think it's going in the right direction. I personally am more okay with the gunplay in 6.1 than I was before. Still don't like it. It's still not very fun, but I'm a little bit more okay with it. I think an extra 50% from the 10%, which would be what, like, because it doesn't add linearly. So what would that be, like? 50? No, it wouldn't be 60. It would be like 54% total. I think that would be too much, honestly, to go with what they're trying to do. But I think another 10%, if it has the same amount of effect, or maybe even 15, would be kind of a sweet spot for me. I think that the suppression mechanic still needs to be changed from a full blur to a tunnel vision. And I think a lot of people have agreed with me on that, is when you're getting shot at or something's going wrong and adrenaline's flying, you don't go blind. You get tunnel vision and hyper focus on something. So even if it's a very small section in the middle of your view that is clear, there should still be some. It should represent tunnel vision, not complete blindness. I would be happy if they reduced the suppression effect and made it tunnel vision. I'm a minority in that I think in the better ICO mod, I think that there isn't enough suppression, because I do enjoy the suppression, just not the way it's implemented and not to the extent that we have it. But I think if they keep on this direction and keep bringing things down incrementally, I don't want to see them release a hotfix where they go way too far the other way either. Like, I think there is a happy medium where most of us will be happy. And I think just going incrementally will find that a little bit better than just like, hey, this time we're going to lower it by another 50%. But I will say I was able to shoot a lot better and a lot more confidently. I was able to run around corners and point fire a lot more effectively. Violence of action seemed to have come back a little bit, and I think it's going the right direction. I just don't think it's quite enough yet.
really quick, I want to add here, Husky provides clarification on the before and now changes after the hotfix. I'll read out a couple from the hats and lat stuff, anti-tank changes, starting with the RPG 29 from 40 meters to 10 meters, RPG 7 from 27 to 10, RPG 28 33 meters to 10, PF 98 from 37.2 to 10 meters, MK 153 SMAW from 44 to 10, Carl Gustav from 46 meters to 10, and finally the N Law from 65 meters to 20 meters.
Honestly, I don't care anything about the hat, anything other than the hats, because the only message I get is remember vehicles, going near the point is suicide.
Yeah. And like what pre-ICO, you couldn't have vehicles rolling into infantry in the point. They would get absolutely clapped by hats and lats, any AT. But when ICO come out, obviously, we got vehicles coming in the front and center around infantry, and they just don't care because they, you can't do anything about it. But this change, 10 meters, they can't do that anymore. It's a good thing for ICO to bring out this 10-meter range for sure.
I really like the suppression the way it is right now. Sorry to hijack that. I just want to get that out there.
I think they're right in that the blur is a little
too much.
A little too spicy, but I would like to see center blur, because if we're gonna go back to just one tapping machine gunners that are suppressing you, just revert so we're working with a known quantity at that point.
With the sway, the aim punch, and doing suppression with tunnel vision correctly, you're still going to be very hard pressed to one tap a machine gunner. I'm not saying to revert back to how it was before. I'm saying it should still be very blurred peripheral. It should just be kind of gradient from the edges into the center. And even if it's only about the size of your optic, typically, you should still have some clarity, right? Especially because we can talk about the immersion and cinematic aspect of the ICO as well. It's like, it doesn't matter how good your game looks. If my screen is blurry 75% of the time, I can't see that shit anyway. So, like, what's the point of having good graphics in a game anyway? So, you're not going to be able, especially with the aim punch and the sway, even if we come down on the aim punch and the sway and make it tunnel vision, you're still not going to be able to just 181 tap a machine gunner that's suppressing you. It's not going to happen.
And, with aim punch, I wonder if a better answer for 6.1, instead of messing with the arming distance, why not implement, I don't know, 1 second aim punch delay for lats and hats? Just to kind of alleviate. Like, it seems like it would be a fairly low impact way to stop kind of that stray around problem, but still keep kind of the heart of ICO of where, like, yes, aggressive IFVs helping infantry push is still very much possible. I'm not really sure on the technical feasibility of aim punch delay for just the rockets. If anybody wants to talk about that, feel free.
One of the things that, I'm not sure. I think we just need a little bit more data before we can, like, are vehicles not dying? At what rate do we want vehicles to die when they behave in certain ways versus when they don't behave in certain ways? Like, because an IFV that's beating you up at 1,500 meters with HE and you're in a building, right? He should obviously be winning that. But when he's up on you at 100 meters, right, or less, or maybe 50 meters or something like that, I think overwhelmingly, especially if the IFV is unsupported, the infantry should be winning that, right? Do we right now not see infantry winning engagements that they should be winning against IFVs that are unsupported, right, at close range, right? I don't know if that's really the case right now. I think the vehicles are getting beat up when they should be.
I think in 6.1 they are, but I feel like in 6.0 they weren't. 6.0, they were really aggressive, getting in between infantry, and because the armor distance is so high and the sway was so high with a hat, it was hard to hit. Like we got a god tier hat player called Adrian on UOD, and the poor bloke couldn't hit a thing in 6.0. He was just struggling so bad with armor distances and the way the sway was. So I feel like now, with the armor distance being 10 meters to 20 meters, it'll make vehicle players be way more cautious than where they are, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a play and a counterplay, right? I think vehicles, if they identify you as a hat player, they can shoot at you and, they might not kill you. Especially if they're driving around fast, you might get into cover. You might not get your shot off, right? You got to sneak up on them or something like that. They can't, sure, they don't suppress you or whatever it is. To the point that there's got to be some kind of give and take on both ways. And I think with the way the arming distance is working, that right now we're at a good spot. To touch on that with suppression, I don't see suppression as an immersion factor. I personally see it as a gameplay factor, and we had a mod for this in Arma to add suppression because we wanted in a PvP game, what we got out of ICO. But what we realized is that suppression doesn't actually work on people who are motivated to win a PvP video game unless you actually debilitate them, right? And right now, I feel that suppression is debilitating enough when you put enough of it out to the fact that it actually works. And I'm a little bit hesitant to suggest nerfing it right now in any way that gives people clarity, because if it's not debilitating, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It goes back to being
They're
meaningless
they're not
immediately.
going to displace. That's the biggest thing now is I suppress people and they displace. I don't want that going away.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is I don't think that making it tunnel vision instead of complete blur would change that. It would just make it that's that happy medium that we keep talking about where it's especially in a CQB environment, you should be able to see something. But going completely blind and not being able to see anything is not only immersion breaking, but it's not fun.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
Yeah, we don't mind. No one. We don't mind the suppression. The suppression is fine, but it's just a way they've gone about it. Like I said before, instead of having that complete blur, just a bit of tunnel vision would be fine. Like have it so it's pretty significant tunnel vision, so you know you're being suppressed, and it's hard for you to fire back. But the complete blindness is just it's not good. But you can't see anything. What was the point of playing? You can't see, 75% of your game, you can't see anything because you're completely blurred.
I think a big thing for me personally, I know it's a thing for other people, is the blur causes nausea and dizziness as well. When it I don't know, I actually just get sick and have to look away from my monitor when my screen's fully blurred, and I don't know, that's just bad game design to me. I don't know, I'm not alone in that.
I think that the blur needs to be in the center of the screen, and the place where you should have clarity is towards the edges. And the reason I'm saying that the blur needs to be in the center of the screen is in order to make it debilitating, where you cannot effectively return fire or observe the enemy, you need to blur the dangerous part of the person's screen, which is the center. And if you put the blur on the edges, right, nobody's aiming at somebody with the edges of their screen, right? So it goes immediately to being ineffective. And I want to touch on the not fun part, because there's RTS games have a similar mechanic to this, or at least MOBAs do, right? We have stunning. And if anybody's ever played Dota, right, it's horrible to get stunned. It is a terrible experience. It is not fun. It sucks. But the entire game is balanced around the fact that you can get stunned. And it sucks to look at your character for a couple seconds and be like, damn, bro, I wish I could do something. And I'm feeling this right now in squad, where suppressing people is like hitting them with Mountain King Stormhammer, and you're taking them out of the game for a few seconds. But
It's satisfying.
It hurts to be on it, and I've been on it a whole bunch. And it sucks to be on it but like I'm looking at it from an RTS perspective, and I'm like, this guy has like taken me out of the game, and like, man, I can't do anything, and I gotta do something else if I want to get back in this fight. Or when I'm on the other end of it, like I'm in a lab and I'm shooting at guys like 600 away, and I'm watching the hat kits like fly in directions that aren't my hull, and I'm like, damn, man, I just knocked that. I just soft killed that guy. And yeah, it's pain, but pain is the only thing that will motivate people to do things differently.
I like
goes-
the way
it-
it hurts.
It goes the
Yeah.
opposite way as well, though, because like I found I use it like if I make a stupid tactical decision where I'm like running across a road and I see a guy lining me up about to punish me, I just spam heap of shots at them and then they just miss and I'm not punished. Like it
Good.
almost goes the other way as
Yeah.
well. Why is that
Good,
good though?
yes.
I should be
That's a
punished for
good
that
thing.
stupid. I should be punished for that stupid play.
No, you have
No.
the initiative. He should have a friend.
He should have shot you.
Really quick, I just want to. Sorry, I just want to read a couple comments here on the topic of suppression. Catching up with chat here, Husky says, "I would be fine with suppression if I can still see stuff and will be not fully out of game. Also, I don't understand the fact that I will be as same suppressed while behind hard cover as the guy in the open field shooting at me, or even getting suppressed behind big walls." And then Flying Floor says, "A question for pro ICO players. Suppression existed before ICO. Why is it such a big of a thing for them as a positive in ICO?"
It wasn't effective before ICO.
Yeah. As a machine gunner, I had this negative feedback loop of no matter what, don't shoot first. Because if I give off a muzzle flash or don't hit my very first round, I'm going to get one tapped.
So,
Maybe that might be a skill issue on my part, but I felt that was kind of the gameplay loop because suppression wasn't effective enough to use.
Forgive me for sounding really Milsim-y, but I want to describe this in gameplay mechanics. The purpose of suppression is to deny two things. One, you want to deny the enemy from being able to shoot back effectively, right? You want that fire superiority thing or whatever. But in terms of gameplay, you also want to deny the enemy the ability to get information, right? By keeping his head down. So when you suppress an area, you're denying the player the ability to effectively return to peek up and look at you, which is what you would get in like real life or whatever, right? That's kind of the effect. You don't want them to look back so that you can run up at them and throw the grenade and everything else. When we are not going to scare human beings in a video game, period. They will always just be like, yeah, if I get shot by peeking this, at least I can tell in death chat, hey, yeah, there's guys coming at us, right? Hey, yeah, he's behind the rock, but he got me. Come give me a Band-Aid, right? That's what happens. Now, you do not get the option of playing the hero. Because, as video game players, we will always play the hero because it's objectively better. Now, suppression, because it's this wacky, overblown graphical effect, means that it's just not going to work. So you have to play the realistic thing, which is get away from the bullets, right? You don't have a
or
choice,
get a bigger
right?
gun.
Or get help, right? Or have somebody bail you out. And when somebody says, "Oh, I see somebody lining up on me," but I stopped and I shot the shit out of him, and he didn't have accurate aiming anymore, and I was able to get away. Yes. And the reason I say this is because that is how attacking must happen. And you soft killed him. You didn't kill him, right? He didn't kill you. The fight continues, but you both have like a fighting chance to play what's the next step. And I think that that's an incredible gameplay design decision that is really lacking from a lot of games where there's all right, I suppressed this guy that was trying to line me up and I am now able to finish crossing this field because he didn't really have a buddy to shoot me or whatever. And now there's all right, what happens next kind of thing. I think that's perfect.
So then let me ask you this, right? I think this is a fundamental disagreement that we might not be able to find an agreement on, but with everything that you just said, how would, if the aim punch still exists and 85% of your screen, if not more, is still blurred, and you're still getting the audio cues of suppression and everything else, how would that change that effect? Like, if I can see 10 to 15% of the center of my screen, but I'm still getting the aim punch, I'm still getting the sway, and I'm still getting the disorienting audio that suppression provides right now, why wouldn't that work? It's not that different. It just makes it more of a tunnel vision instead of a complete blindness, which I think a lot of us, it makes a lot of people sick. Like, I don't have this issue, but I know a lot of people that do have this issue where it makes a lot of people feel sick not being able to see anything. But then also, like, you should still be able to see something, even if it's just a pinhole tunnel, because otherwise, you're completely useless for anything else. Like, you can't even tell if you're moving towards hardcover or not because you can't see anything on your screen. So, like, if we want to enforce quote unquote realistic or authentic behavior for firefights, I think it would be more beneficial to be able to see a small portion of the center of your screen than being completely blind the entire time.
I'm not going to pretend that I know if it's not going to work. I'm just saying that I like what it is now, and that before we make a big patch, I'd like to see it tested, and I'd like to see some demos.
Really quick here, Helios are really popular tonight with the people in the chat. Let me read a question here from Gray, and this goes for everybody. And then I have a question directly towards Helios from a Husky. So the question for everybody comes from Gray275. Says, I made a suggestion in the squad Discord where if you're looking/aiming directly at someone, their suppression is less effective to make 1v1s feel less random/annoying. Thoughts? And the question directly to Helios here from Husky says, it can't be real that if you fight full auto at 2 meters with 2 players, that it often ends in a knife fight because both hitting nothing. For a game that states himself to not be... Hold on, I'm sorry. For a game that states himself to be not a milsim game.
I'm going to go second because there's like 3 questions in there because I think the floor was given everybody first, right?
Sure, yeah.
I'm honestly not against that change with the.
If you're talking about that grade 275's first suggestion about suppression in 1v1s, like from a distance, it does make sense. Like if you're shooting at somebody, that person should be more suppressed than the people next to him. You know what I mean? Instead of the whole group in one area being so suppressed from one person shooting in one direction. It does make sense, but I don't know how hard that would be to implement.
I think
that'd be really hard to implement in the game. That'd be like extremely hard to implement in the game.
Yeah.
So might have to tone down the suppression effect to like 1 meter part, like 1 meter around a player, one certain player. That every player needs that same suppression effect. Like, I think it would be really CPU heavy. Most probably, it'd be really hard to implement in the game.
I can't even comprehend the kind of logic you'd need.
Yeah, that'd be really hard. I don't know how a dev would actually bring that into the game at all. I don't know how that would. Yeah, it's a good idea. It would be really good, but yeah, I don't know how that would make it happen. To be honest with you,
you're typically facing the guys that are going to be shooting at you, so I don't think it'd work out all that well if it was directional.
I just thought, like, wouldn't I be able to abuse that? For example, if I'm trying to shoot Sandy right now, in game, and then if that, mechanic was in the game, I would, like, abuse that by just shooting to his left and his right first to first effectively suppress him, and then knowing that his screen is extremely blurred to the maximum extent possible because I'm not looking directly at him originally first when I engaged in him. That's when I go in for the kill because he's blurred.
It's people would game it that much.
It's abused now. In 6.0 and ICO, you can have one guy at a hill. We do this on Scott. It's that we roll puppies back to main easier than ever. And this is how we do it. We have one guy sitting behind cover, and he'll randomly shoot single shots at a cap. Just randomly shoot in that one single shot direction, and the rest of the squad just rushes the cap. And that's it. Take the cap, done. Keep doing that, and then you roll puppy back to main every game. That's the meta. That's what it is now.
That's a classic fire maneuver, though. That's the one thing is
one guy randomly shooting at a heap of buildings with a rifle.
No, the difference there is
single shotting. He's single shotting at the random buildings, then it suppresses everyone on that whole cap. And then you can run on.
Exists to stop that. If
You
you
can
and your
run on and
if you and your 9 bros or whatever get in a squad and want to roll puppies, there's basically nothing that's going to stop that.
One thing that I'll
So
say is that maybe the values there. You're exposing some issues with like suppression buildup versus distance over time and things like that, right? That can be looked at to see that maybe the rate of fire for suppression is a little bit too low if these people are rendered truly incapacitated by the extremely low amount of fire that you're putting out, right? What's going on with the numbers there? And again, I'm not trying to tell you that you're wrong and that this doesn't happen. I just want to be like, hey man, like I want to see it from both perspectives. I want to experience that and be like, yeah, dude, I can't shoot back. These numbers are too high. But um, uh, maybe your suppression is just super effective, and these people are just so disoriented by these effects that are not happening. I don't know.
That's what it is. That's what it is. What you just said. Then the ladder. They're so like you're shooting in a random direction over a cap, and it's we are able to get across an open field or across an open road, and we shouldn't be able to get across there. That people on that cap should be able to defend themselves and fire back when they can't.
I'll give you
The-
another example of abusing that I've personally used that I think is a better abuse example there. On Cora, we were sitting. I had one guy in a Samir Logi sitting right outside of main, just shooting that Samir in a left to right to left sweeping motion over radio. Like not aiming at any of the walls or the buildings, they were just aiming in that general direction. And a lot of times they were even getting main base protection messages because it was flying over the entire map, and it's doing exactly what they're saying. Of course, those are 50s, right? That's a chord, so it's a much more pronounced suppression effect. But like this guy's sitting right outside of main base, shooting across half the map, and just shooting over the cap and suppressing people. Or another good example of that is my general play style now is if I'm trying to go in and clear a building or something like that, I'll literally just pre-fire. I don't even know if anybody's in there. I'll just pre-fire a burst through the door before I walk through the door. That not only gets my gun up and ready for point fire, but it also suppresses anybody that's in the room. There's ways to abuse it for sure.
We need to give people a way to fight back against the suppression. Like I get that it should be daunting to you that you are suppressed and you feel suppressed, but you can't take a person out of the game just because they're being shot in that general direction towards you. You need to give that person a reason to fight back.
But there is a way to fight back against suppression.
You need to
What?
move.
Some firing from main base. There's a way to fight back against that.
So
But
for
that's
the
not a
CQ
fundamental issue with
Well,
suppression, though.
it kind of is. No? You literally, there's nothing you can do but be suppressed because the guy is firing bullets. Unlimited ammo, no, because you can just rearm from main. Across the cap.
You have to give someone a way to fight against suppression. You can't just say fight back because then you're both just doing nothing at each other, just shooting in the same general direction, and you're both, you're not going to win a firefight if you're both suppressing each other. You're both going to be blurred.
I think the easiest way to fix it.
You need to give them a way to fight back against suppression.
The easiest way to balance it is just make it so that you actually have to be firing at them accurately to suppress them. Rather than right now you can shoot like 2 meters away and it suppresses them.
We've got 3 distinct problems here, and 3 distinct scenarios are not going to have the same solution. The first problem that I'm going to bring up is in CQB, you can pre-fire a door, which will suppress people behind the door, and also bring your weapon up, and you will apply the suppression effect to people on the other side of the door. I think the solution to that one might be a minimum arming distance for suppression fire when you're in CQB, right? You can't suppress people within 5 meters of you. Maybe you got to play with the numbers, or maybe it's just significantly reduced to reduce the kind of like spraying effect that we've got in CQB, because you're not really suppressing people like that, right? Maybe we reduce the suppression effect if the game has the capacity to detect if both shooters are inside of a building, right? Or inside of the same structure. I'm not sure what the logic would look like, but that's one aspect. Another aspect is that the suppression is so high that it is that trivial amounts are enabling people to make maneuvers that they otherwise would not have made. My challenge to that is, would you actually have been able to make it? You said this was pubbers, so I don't know what the skill level of these, people who were watching you cross the road was. Would they have engaged you or not? Were they coordinated? Were they willing to shoot back at you even though they couldn't click your head? I don't know. And I don't know if we have any data for that, right? Because people, even without suppression, are often really blind in this game. And I think the third issue that we have is that projectiles that aren't even landing nearby, that just fly over your head, are providing overwhelming suppression effects when they shouldn't be. And I think a solution to that one might be maybe we have to reduce the amount of suppression gained from rounds that fly over your head, and maybe kind of put some of that back into rounds that impact close to you, or in terrain features nearby, so that you just don't get immediately put down by rounds that go off into the ether, right?
Yeah, like if you're behind a wall, you get less suppression effect than you are if you're out in the open, sort of thing. But now you get the same. It's the same suppression effect right now. So, but if you're behind a wall or behind a defilade of cover, you shouldn't get a suppression effect like you do if you're in the open.
Yeah, I always think it's funny when I throw a grenade over a wall and I get suppressed.
I still think it's as simple as making it you're only suppressed if it's accurate fire. Like within a certain amount of meters, if the bullet's landing, you get suppressed. So then it means if someone does want to suppress, they actually have to think about like where they're shooting.
I mean, we don't mind the suppression effect. Like we like the having a suppression effect. It's not the problem. It's just too much. Like and then Cam said before, it's making people sick. Like people, makes my eyes strain and gives me a headache, and it's made people physically sick, like they're in VR. Makes them, it makes their whole, it gives them vertigo because they're bloody, they can't see anything.
It's not to
So
mention parallax on the scopes.
it needs to be changed so people can enjoy it again, because people are getting physically ill from it, and that's not a good thing. And we need to give infantry a way to fight back against the overwhelming suppression effect we have right now.
I think a good way to play with that would be certain things like recovery times, the amount of suppression that would be given to you, as I said, when bullets go off and don't impact, and recovery benefits from hiding behind cover and not popping out, as well as maybe changing the display a little bit to maintain it being debilitating, because again, we gotta neutralize that center of the screen so it's fucking awkward to point it on somebody regardless of the suppression, right? We gotta neutralize that. But we can't get you. We don't want you to have to buy a new keyboard, right? I want to just, because somebody put a question to me a second ago. The first thing I want to say is I really hate when people say this game was supposed to not be milsim. And the reason I hate milsim is because it's basically a catch-all for things you don't like, because it's invoking this imagery of like the 15-year-old Arma kid who's yelling "Call me sir" into the microphone, and it's ridiculous, right? Milsim is a useless term because there are so many variations of what it could possibly be that it has no real meaning. So when we say this game's not supposed to be milsim, doesn't mean anything. What the game is trying to do is make players have to fight in a tactical battlefield with some kind of facsimile of infantry combat as we, civilians understand it, right? How much we want to implement, certain things like suppression or certain concepts have to be expressed individually, right, for the kind of gameplay loop that we want. So saying it's not supposed to be milsim, you lost me with that one. The other part of your question, I think, was related to how machine gun. I actually just can't remember it because it was a minute. Can somebody repeat the question to me?
It can't be real that if you fight full auto at 2 meters with 2 players, that it ends up in a knife fight because both hitting nothing and running out of ammo.
Yeah, the Boondocks moments where both players shoot over each other and miss everything. Yeah, I think, again, maybe the solution to that, because it's...
Pistol finally getting some use, though.
The solution to that might be, well, we have to check what range do we want to say this is now where players should, be under this effect, and they should be suppressing each other and ducking and things like that. And what range is it like, hey man, I can poke you with my gun, the bullets should be hitting you. I think the minimum suppression distance might be something that helps you with that. And I say, a handful of meters would might alleviate that. And we change the suppression effect for these things happening in these CQB ranges. But yeah, it's a little bit silly, especially in like the bush fights where you're like kind of spraying into the bushes because somebody was hiding there, and you get the suppression effect. You're kind of just hosing it. I want to play the game a little bit more and see how it feels more before I want to say like, yeah, maybe we should put it in 5 meters. You don't get suppressed as much or something. Maybe we should change the effect a little bit. But yeah, it's weird.
Really
But,
quick,
that's my saying.
really quick, I just want to read some facts from Husky. He got these suppression facts from the squad SDK. Just 4 lines here. First one is suppression radius 10 meter sphere around the player and does not care about walls being in between. Number 2, suppression timer 20 seconds before you can fully see again. Number 3, full suppression radius 1 meters in one shot. And finally, number 4, minimum distance to suppress each other 0 meters.
So yeah, I mean, 10 meters. Yeah, that's just over 30 feet in the air. You can fire over somebody with a 30 feet in the air and get suppression. Like
Not
that's
just
insane.
a 50, right? Any gun, a rifle, or is it just 50s? That's any gun, right?
Husky? Clarification, please.
Right, but the suppression effect is stronger with 50s, is it not?
Yeah, it is.
So my question for you and for Helios and Venom, I guess, because you're the 2 really pro ICO players here, is at what point do we decide that the gameplay style, the firefight style, the you know lack of realism for sake of authenticity, whatever, at what point do we decide that those changes are a detriment to the overarching macro game of Squad? Like, I've already voiced my opinion that I already think it's doing that to too much of an extent. For you guys, at what point do you think that it's too much and it negatively affects the ability to actually play a game of Squad too much?
I think that, personally, I've had, things about the suppression revealed to me that I think are a little bit detrimental to the macro game, and that you can suppress main bases by shooting people, by missing them by 30 feet. I think that's a little bit silly. I also think that maybe we could tweak it a little bit in terms of how it works in CQB environments. And I mean, again, I would like to be able to play with the numbers and then, go do some 5v5 or 10v10 and CQB and futz around with it to see what feels good and what doesn't, and collect some data. In terms of the macro game, my current experience in pubbers is that when I play with squads that I lead, or when I lead squads, or when I play in the servers that I happen to frequent, I still see people scrambling for objectives, and sometimes I see people getting left behind on old objectives. But this is also a big problem of logistics, and unless people are willing to play logistics, the firefight mechanics aren't really going to matter. Like, I'm in a game right now, right? We just got capped. We got double capped. We got people 2 flags behind. My squad's the only guys defending. Dudes are trying to attack the old flag even though it's out of game right now. How do we solve this issue as a team? We got to evac these guys. It means you got to fly a helicopter in there and start flying them out. That means the squad leader's got to start saying stuff like, "Oh shit, I got to get out of here." People got to listen. I'm feeling issues with that really stem from what kind of experience the player wants, whether or not they're willing to listen, how disciplined they are to turn their eyes away from something. And I'm not really feeling that, the firefight mechanics are really going to change the player's mind in that thing, right? Maybe, listen, you've got thousands of hours on me. I just need to. I'm not feeling it right now. That the firefight they're sucked up in on, even if they weren't in the firefight, they're still going to eat the logistics problem of having to march their way back here. It's such a multifaceted problem with people's behavior. I'm not buying that it's just these firefight mechanics that's doing it. What I am seeing though is people are dying and spawning on this hab, and the problem in general with talking about this is that it's so overwhelmingly varied. So much variation in player skill, willingness to cooperate, because those things have nothing to do with each other, right? There's a lot of people who are like down to respawn, who are dog shit at aiming, right? Who will respawn just to be present on the objective, just because they know that, well, at least I was on where the fight was going on, even though I suck. There's lots of those people. There are people who are great shooters who just don't really give a shit about the objective anyway, and they're going to stay there. And it's so much about behavior. You know, you get what I'm trying to say here, right? I'm falling off the deep end with it, but
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's about the behavior, so that kind of stems from my question. My personal experience is that this has reinforced the behavior that is causing these issues. They've always been issues in squad. We agree on that. I have noticed that it's reinforcing those behaviors instead of helping to curb those behaviors. And so my question for you guys is, at what point are those behaviors so unacceptable that it's game breaking for you?
I have a quick question, maybe for you, Swooper. Is as we've all recognized what the meta has been in our world, I think what's happened is that it's just completely changed. It is a defensive game now. So pushing, there's not a lot of incentive to attack. There's not a lot of incentive to push and make that strategy to go attack. So from what I'm seeing, it's just a complete 180-degree shift in terms of how the game is actually played. Whether it's the right way in your eyes in terms of attacking and objectives, it's just the way it is now. So
I agree and disagree with you on that one. I agree in the fact that the players now think it's a defensive game and want to play it defensively, but it's actually not. It's still the same attacking game as it always been, which isn't a good thing because you can abuse.
I think that's a good. I think that's a good
so much
distinction.
more now.
Hold on,
100%.
You can abuse suppression so much more now.
He had a question. He hasn't actually asked his question yet. Let him ask his question real quick.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's fine. It was more of just a discussion. It wasn't. It was just more of a rebuttal in terms of. I think that what's happening is we're seeing, and to your point, Aaron, you're right. I think that it isn't necessarily. I think it's how people are taking the game now, right? It's how they're playing it right now, not necessarily maybe how it should be played. But again, that's the experience that people are having right now. So I don't know if it's necessarily. Again, I will say I've been playing it now for a week, and I will say I've come around a little bit to the idea that, yeah, we need to adapt different ways of thinking about the game. And that's just a matter of fact. That's not like a pie in the sky type of behavior. That's something that you have to do in order to cope, right? How to adapt.
So what I would present to you is, if that's the general mindset, right, that there's no incentive to attack and it's a defensive game. Well, if both teams are playing defense, there's no offense, there's no fight, right? So, but I will say that issue specifically was not caused by the changes in the ICO. That was actually caused a couple of patches back when they decided to remove bleed from RAS. That was a
That's
huge
fair.
gameplay change, and one that I very adamantly disagree with, because it did create that more of a, turtle, we don't really have an incentive to attack mentality. Is that, hey, they're not bleeding anymore, right? Like there's no incentive to take that point because it's not going to cause them to bleed. We might as well just have an attrition war here. But I think it was reinforced with the
Reinforced,
ICO.
100%. Every
think-
single game I play now is a defensive game. And it always ends up with 100 tickets on this side, 100 tickets on that side. Nobody wants to attack, and you just sit around at the defensive point.
And I think that was OWI's. That's what they wanted. That's what OWI wanted. They wanted to slow the game right down, make the games go longer, which it's not a good thing. It can.
Yeah, I mean,
as we've seen, it can be abused like crazy. Like people think that the game is played defensively when you can abuse it and play it very much attacking.
Yeah.
Like, and when you figure that out, you figure that out.
The other premise of it is, I disagree that we needed to slow the game down. Like, yeah,
Oh,
there were
definitely,
those
100%.
I
there were
agree
those
with that.
games, like there were those
100%.
RAS games and AS games that would, only last 20 minutes because the team got rolled. But that's, at the end of the day, that's a balancing and team play issue. But good games of AS and RAS, some of them were lasting the full 2 hours. Like, you want to slow it down even more than that? But like, it just comes down to, like, with the way that people are playing now and the way that, like, the way it's happening, they should just come out with a new fucking game mode that only has 1 point on each map and vary the point for each layer and just go fight over that point. Like, that basically is how it feels.
They did have a game mode that slowed it down, didn't they? TC wasn't TC put out there to
God.
take tiles and strategically move throughout the map to take tiles and win. That slowed the game right down, and having just 5 or 6 cats.
If only they could
But
figure
no one-
out how to fix the TC bugs that
Yeah,
are
but
literally game
TC is
breaking.
so bugged, and that why don't they fix that in the first place? Just fix TC. TC is a
How
great
about-
game mode when it works well.
Why
I think-
not to slow their games down? I just sort of like why not just increase the ticket count that each team starts with? Wouldn't that
Well,
as long as
I mean-
as long as the team doesn't get rolled, like the games are just going to go longer because there's more tickets?
I mean, again, like, there were already a lot of really good games before they got rid of the ticket bleed and before they did any of this that were already lasting the full 2 hours. Like, why do you want to increase games that much more? Like, before, invasions were already long ass drawn out slugfests, and now, like, dude, oh man, like, invasion games are lasting the full 2 hours almost without question now.
I
think
think
a lot of people would skip invasion now too.
I kind of don't agree that the update necessarily slowed the game down in terms of like absolutes. I think the response to what's going on with the changes has made players kind of behave like baby RTS players, where they kind of want to turtle up because it's easy. Defense always comes easy. But when you kind of figure out how you can go in there and beat somebody's face in, you really can't do it, because as we've heard, you can really attack people. And suppression is a really debilitating weapon when employed. But there is no collective consciousness in the game for how to properly execute attacks. Now, I'm sure that everybody in here absolutely knows what they should look like, despite the fact that ICO is new, right? We've got enough people who've been playing this game or have been playing these kind of tactical games for long enough to figure it out. But the average blue doesn't. And because we're not the average, we're not making a big enough impact for us to really see it yet. And I think that will change over time. I just played a game today where everybody massed up outside of a super fob. The commander dropped a bunch of artillery on it. We dropped smoke mortars at the same time. Vehicles rolled up. A shit ton of infantry poured in. And the flag went down in a couple of minutes, right? There was that big wind-up punch, and we went right through it. And it was only like, it wasn't the whole team. It was 2 squads and some vehicles, right? And it's possible. But people don't really believe in the method yet. And I think we can teach people, and I think people will start to learn it over time. And then you'll start to see more aggressive gameplay in the games, on average, speed up and become much more fluid and dynamic. But until you get that collective understanding, you're not there yet.
See, people aren't moving and playing more defensively because they can't shoot. They can't shoot, they're going to move. Everyone thinks that if they hide behind a wall, in a bush for the whole game, they can shoot stuff. No one wants to attack anymore because they feel like if they attack and run around, they're not going to shoot anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and the biggest group of people I see hiding in bushes are people that are not in 9-man squads with lots of machine guns and 2 medics rolling up as a group that's supported by the team we're talking on command chat.
Which is
I mean,
making the
yeah,
lone
but-
wolf gameplay still be well, even more now so OP. Like everyone complained about, no more lone wolfers, no more COD players, but they see the lone wolf more than you ever do now in ICO because they're sitting in a bush or on a rock shooting a whole squad.
And then
I
on
don't
the other
get my-
side of that coin, the 9-man squads that are working together, quote unquote, that you see, like there's plenty of screenshots and videos of it. Like we can't argue that this isn't happening. We just see them clumped up behind a fucking berm, all
Yeah.
shooting in the same direction and not moving. Like it looks like they're working together, but it's not.
They're bringing nothing to the
Not.
game.
Yeah, I totally agree that they're not. And I would say that those aren't the kinds of dudes that are doing the kind of work that I'm talking about. Because when I run up on, I'm sure that, listen, if I ran into U sweeps, I'd have a whole lot more trouble dealing with it. But the vast majority of when I get a bunch of blueberries and we run up on some guy in a bush, as I said before, I might lose a guy. Maybe he's real good and I lose 2 guys. But the 3rd guy gets him and the medics pick up the casualties and we continue on without really missing a step. And that happens over and over and over again, right? Because the squads are moving in, like a line that's perpendicular to the bad guys, right? Not a column or like a file where they're streaming in one at a time, where you get these kinds of problems. And we're also, doing some actual fire maneuver. You move, I cover, right? And we have like lanes of approach and we're thinking about it and it's dynamic, right? People aren't doing that. And I believe that why the game is so slow is because that's the minimum standard. I'm not particularly good at it, but I think I'm getting the minimum done and I'm getting a lot of it. I'm getting a lot out of it. But the vast majority of people are not thinking about, hey, cover me, I'm going to move up a bit. All right, come back. All right, come forward. All right, I'm moving up again and we're inching our way up. Or we're, hey, you go on my right side, you go on my left side, stay shoulder to shoulder, put 5 meters between each other, keep your eyes peeled, watch out. People aren't looking at basic things like formations, right? And if you don't, you get tactical blobs like you're describing in these videos. Where they just get shot up by one guy in a bush, right? The firefight is won before it started, right? And people aren't playing the firefight before they started, and that's why they're getting wrecked. And until we do that, yeah, you're gonna see goofy ass gameplay. But my belief in ICO is not what people are currently doing; it's what people can potentially do. And I feel that the potential for what ICO will bring us in the gameplay is more fun for me than what I saw out of 5.0 Squad. I'm not going to say that it's better. I just like this direction more. But they're both valid, right?
So for common ground, would you be happy if we kept the suppression, kept the PIP scopes, kept the slower player movement, and everything else, but made it so that the gunplay was tight enough that the rest of us are happy as well? Would that be a compromise in your eyes?
Well, the other thing I'd want to say is, we got to start tweaking the suppression effects, because the stats that we just pulled up are a little bit wacky, I'd give you even a little bit more than that. But, to say the weapon's tight, you got to give me some like harder numbers. But, yeah, I'm totally willing to play with the numbers. And I think a lot of people in ICO are also willing to play with the numbers. I think the biggest thing for us is we want to be able to take people out of the fight with suppression fire. We want, stamina management to be a really big thing. We want infantry movement to be a little slower, so there's more reliance on vehicle transport and logistics. But do we think that it could probably feel a little bit better? Yes. How do we get there? I'm not going to comment. I want to play the game for a couple more weeks before I come up with some concrete numbers of what I want to be different. I know that I just shot a guy with a PKM while crouched and prone and standing still, and the gun was uncontrollable. Maybe that's necessary. I don't know. But I'm definitely willing to change as long as it's in the direction of where it's going. Yeah, I don't want it to feel awful for people, and I empathize with the fact that people think it feels awful.
So would that be a yes to everything the ICO adds, but old gunplay purely?
I would even go further than old gunplay. I would say get rid of the RNG stability mechanic and just make the stamina based sway that we already had much more punishing.
Yep, I agree. it does feel way too RNG when the weapon sway, doesn't it? When you're close range to somebody and you get that boondock thing going on. It's just it's a pain.
Not to defend it. Oh, go ahead. I just really quick.
Yeah, you're right, mate. You go. You're good.
Not to defend it. The new system is animation based, and I don't know how much OWI would be able to do from a purely technical perspective to achieve any of the things we're talking about because of the way that it's coded. And I think we would need an expert to come in and say whether or not this is even possible. Because I don't know how much we can go back to the old gunplay because of how fundamental the mechanics, the technical stuff behind the way the new gunplay works is implemented, right?
The new gunplay isn't going to come back ever again. We're not going to do a revert where we revert back to V5 and have the old gunplay. But what we need to do, we need to come together and have a middle ground. You know what I mean? Like,
if a modder like Husky can do it, then OWI can do it. Like,
I won't do it though. That's the issue, man. I would love for V5 to come back tomorrow. I would love nothing more than to see V5 come back tomorrow or even tonight, man. It's not going to happen. OWI won't do it. They've spent too much time and money on ICO just to abandon it now. So we need to come together and have a common ground in the middle and just fine tune things as best as we can to make everyone feel comfortable in playing the game together.
No, what I'm saying is
infighting Discord has been a joke lately, man.
What I'm saying is Husky did exactly what I'm talking about, where he all but eliminated the site misalignment, which is something we're all pissed off at.
Yeah.
And he made it so that their new stability mechanic is basically non-existent, and he made the stamina-based sway more punishing. Like, if Husky can do that, then OWI can do that.
Yeah, exactly right. But if they do it, that's the thing, though, man. Will they do it? It would take a long. Like, we'll be testing. We'll be actively testing ICO in public gaming for the next months on end until they come to realization where everyone's sort of happy.
My fundamental problem with it is that middle ground subtext sounds a lot like, let me tweak it until we have all of the cosmetics and none of the actual mechanics. Some level of weapon handling slop is just always going to be needed to facilitate that fire and movement.
So aim punch and stamina-based weapon sway, like, that is sloppy weapons unless you manage your stamina, which I think is exactly what most people are asking for.
You still have to play slow and calculated and not sprint everywhere to get the best out of your gun, where you can actually...
Yeah, like Trevor said, a more punishing version we had in V5. That sounds pretty good to me. If you're willing to sprint full pelt across a map, you should be punished for it for sure.
Basically, right now you have it with the gunplay. You can be perfect with your stamina, not sprint. You get into a gunfight, and when you're ADS, you still have to wait 2 seconds before you can actually take the accurate shot, and it's just too much considering you perfectly played with your stamina and everything. Whereas it should be, okay, I didn't sprint at all. I've got perfect stamina, so I should be able to take an instant accurate shot. That should be my reward.
It's not even it's not even realistic. It's just over the top. They've gone way too far with it, with the sway. But we've got to find a middle ground for everyone to come together and then try. You're not going to make everyone happy, but as long as ODI make some changes and everything, and then make a few people happy, we have some sort of resolution, and then just see how it goes.
I don't know, because I think you just mentioned something really important there, where you said, I want the instantaneous, accurate shot.
Yep.
And I don't know if OWI wants you to have it. I'm not arguing for or against.
No, I agree. That's fundamentally where the split in the play base is going to remain, because I'm going to say the Steam charts and everything or reviews are pretty accurate. At least half the player base, being generous, wants that. They want to be able to, if they play smart, still be able to, like, you know, take a quick, accurate shot and feel rewarded and satisfied when they hit it. Whereas right now, it's you play
I don't think
perfectly,
that's coming back.
but
Honestly,
but if you play with all the suppression that you guys are talking about, then people won't be able to abuse that. So you'll get the skill. You'll still get the skill expression of I'm good at the game. I can fuck people. But if squads play as a squad and use all the suppression that you're talking about, then that's not going to be as like prevalent in the gameplay loop, right?
Give me double ammunition so that I can suppress every bush.
No, I actually agree with you. I think you need to have way more ammunition now. I don't think there's enough ammo for the gameplay style they want.
You know, I'm on the fence. I'm on with the quick, accurate shots. They feel good. I love Tarkov. I love Quake. They feel good. But
Try out Husky's mod. That's basically what we want. So you can test it out and see what you think about it.
yeah, I'll give it a shot. In the range. The thing, I'll probably go on the server if there's a server running it too. Just from right now, from a point of ignorance, I don't know. I'm starting to get a feel for this whole, and especially because I'm playing a PKP right now. I'm starting to get a feel for this. I'm not gonna get it. I'm not gonna get it. I'm never gonna get it. It's never an option. The quick, accurate shot will never come. And I'm trying to wrap my head around a gameplay loop in which that happens, and it's weird. But I'm trying to give it a college try to see if it's like mushy, because it feels it doesn't feel right to not get the accurate shot and have to say, wait a minute, hang on. Okay, go.
Exactly.
Does it
right?
feel natural? But I want to give it a shot to see if I can trick my brain into giving it a loop and get it to feel satisfying and understand what it's supposed to be and how I can still shoot, because it is a skill. It's still here. It's just that I don't get quick, instant, accurate shots. I think it's still skill based. It's just not the same. And I don't want to pass judgment without like really giving it a lot more. I want to get good at it. I want to see what it's like at a super, at a really high expression point where I got it down to a science. I want them to hot fix it after they do it, and I got to learn it again. I'm not ready to pass a judgment on it because I don't like giving instantaneous judgments on these things.
my
fair.
impression, keep it how it is, because it reinforces you want to move. You need somebody to help cover you. It's really kind of like it does reinforce. If you want to move, movement has a cost. You should have someone cover you, at least in my experience.
Walking 3 steps, seeing an enemy, and then because they were standing still, they kill you is like, it's just not. It's not an enjoyable way to play the game. Like it literally, if you want to be in a 50-50 gunfight where you're on equal ground, the only way that's ever going to happen is if 2 people are in bushes across a field see each other at the same time. Otherwise, it's always going to be skewed towards the guy that was sitting still, and that's just not good gameplay. No matter how like you swing it.
Well, it isn't always skewed towards the guy who's just standing still, because we do
In
have
what
like
way?
suppression mechanics. Well,
Suppression, right?
we do have the suppression mechanics. There are also really, really wild um, uh, mechanics for aiming with different scopes that you might have. So like CQB scopes versus like ACOGs, right? All sorts of like crazy things that, and I think there are probably more mechanics. So I don't know if it's just sit still, but yeah, that's a PR feeling.
Yeah,
But I think there's more to it than that, and I want to explore a little bit more to see if there's more than those two things.
yeah. I'll just openly, like, kind of as a response, say, yeah, all things being equal, the guy sitting still should win. It's a more stable firing position.
But as the thing is though, is that like maybe yeah, it's how it should work and probably how it is in real life even. But is that how it should work in a video game where it's a PvP game mode where to win, you need to attack the other team and take their flags. And that sort of gameplay loop, it's just completely counterintuitive. I mean, look at Invasion. If the whole idea of Invasion is one team attacks, and it's so easy to defend because you're just sitting still and waiting for the enemy to walk into you, then
yeah, all
completely
things
counterintuitive.
equal, yeah, it's gonna, all things being equal, it should be easier to defend. That's why mechanics like suppression exist to mitigate that, or having people cover you. But yeah, that's the fundamentals of fire and movement, is that defense is easier than attack.
One of the things that's interesting for attacking or for invasion is that the attacking team gets a shit ton of fighting vehicles with HE ammo that can make it a really, really terrible time to sit in a fortification, right? And that's how you would kind of skew these defensive positions with, hey, I can give you a miserable day if you're sitting in one place, even if I can't see you. And in terms of hey, we got to attack, right? How do I get through dudes sitting in bushes or sitting down and holding still, right? Do we get firefight that looks like, people playing Call to Arms with people kind of doing buddy rushes and bounding up, right, and moving careful while one is or more are covering, and they're kind of exploring and poking things out in a really slow, methodical manner when you have two forces encounter each other? Maybe that's what they want. I really think that that can be fun. I've seen it played a lot in PR, especially in 0.9, and I also like the current versions of it, where it's a really, really slow, methodical fight for position, and that's where a lot of your skill is, picking the positions and being preemptive. Does it always feel good? No, but it has its own flavor, and it works.
Got us quite there. I mean, yeah, I think, personally for me, I'm always a thing with video games. If it's there should be no time in a video game where it feels shitty to play because of a mechanic. I don't know. That's definitely how my point of view on it stands, especially for a PvP game.
You beat Balteus?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Nope.
Now we
I
can,
got you.
if you were talking.
I
It's a beat 'em.
I actually kind of, I get what you're saying, but I kind of disagree, because it's there's no time a video game should be shitty. So you like dying? You know what I mean? It's
No, but I want to. Again, this is just a personal thing, but when I die in a game, I want it to be through my mistakes, right? For example, but lately in the ICO, I found myself getting very frustrated when I move into a bad position. Someone whiffs on me, I turn, and then they kill me. It's almost more frustrating than me just getting one-tapped by that guy for my own mistakes.
What do you mean
sort
whiff?
of different. So, because the gunplay is so shit, they fire a heap of bullets at me, miss.
throw the
I turn
shot,
to go.
basically.
I turn to kill them, and then they kill me.
I mean, that's
It's more
fundamentally
frustrating than getting
flawed,
one
though.
tapped.
That's
It's more
fundament-
frustrating than getting one tapped by someone behind me and dying. Because
I-
all I'm doing is sitting there is thinking, "Fuck me," or sorry, this bad player killed me. That's all I'm thinking. And it's I don't know. This is probably not really related, but that's a thought I have a lot now with the ICO when I die. Even today with the new G3 update, where you get one shot within 20 meters. I line up a guy behind a wall. He sees me, and while I'm lining up my shot, he just full auto sprays without even aiming. He gets that lucky shot, and it's just cool skill issue, I guess. Because I didn't just randomly full auto as well. I tried to line up a shot, and he just random full autoed and killed me. It's just not fun. It's terrible.
I mean, that's the thing with squad though, is fundamentally at certain points in squad, nothing you can do will help the situation. It's just out of your hands. You're playing with 49 other dudes. It's so I think to just fundamentally not be anti-ICO, there's some you have to accept a little bit some of that agency being taken out of your hands of just like, yeah, like if I want to be successful, I have to have somebody covering me.
It's kind of not like the reality even in the ICO though. I don't know.
Well, I mean, theory
Especially when
doesn't.
it's like a bushwalkie. I don't know. There's so many tangents I could get on about, but I'm about to go to bed anyway. But yeah, fundamentally, I think when it comes to most of these changes, they're just over the top. That's pretty much where I stand with it. Like it's the suppression, which you can even agree with. That's just ridiculous. 10 meters to be suppressed. Then
Yeah. I don't disagree. Like, to be clear, I don't disagree with that. Like, the actual values, like hard numbers, can always be tweaked. But fundamentally, I like what the suppression has done to the gameplay loop.
yeah. I mean, it's even like for other mechanics, it's like full damage. Why did that need to be changed? Like, granted, the jumping around and mid-air vaulting probably did need to go, even though it was fun, very fun. But that did need to
Because-
go.
Oh,
But
that's
the
a
idea of
positive
like,
thing. That's a
but the full
positive
damage
thing.
itself, like how much damage you would take falling off stuff. That like, why did they have to change?
Did it go up? It feel like it went up.
It went way
Oh,
up.
it went up big
Like-
time. Big
I-
time.
I feel. Well, here's what I feel. I feel the first time I did it, like I really should have taken the stairs.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
and now that I feel that I really should have taken the stairs, I now go take the stairs.
Okay,
And
hold on.
feeling
on.
I don't
Feeling-
disagree. But
Feeling like you should have taken the stairs is completely different than exiting a lav and somehow by exiting the lav, you're now on top of the lav and you die when you jump off.
Jump off. Yep.
it's just
Also,
like it's the overarching theme of this ICO for it's like I can agree that perhaps it is a step in the right. Like I think the pip scopes are for me the biggest thing. It's a nerf to the optic meta that existed.
Even another thing too is the vaulting is they put that way down so you can't vault as high anymore over fences. Which is, I'll give you an example: Black Coast, the castle at Black Coast. You can't. Well, you can go underneath to flank. You can get underneath the castle and you vault up to get inside of it. You can't actually do that anymore because they've changed the vaulting mechanics. You can't actually vault up that anymore to do a flank from the
Yeah.
inside.
I have another example of that on Anvil today. There's lots of spots on the cliffs that used to be designed specifically so you can vault up them to get on top of the cliffs, and now you just can't. It's like, okay, well, it's sort of not something that needed to
So
change.
there's been design change. There's been gameplay changes that take consideration the maps that they've designed themselves. So
Hey, even like
That's
the
a very-
stamina.
Can
Oh,
I-
you go.
That's like a very great point that the change with the parkour. You can't actually change the parkour, I think, without changing every single map that was built around this vault height. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like now, I feel like the whole of Mutaha should just be changed because almost every wall now is unvaultable. You just go through through it like a maze, basically. It's not,
Yeah.
I don't think that's fun. Just walking around. No, there is no exit here. Nothing here. You just walk around like like in a maze.
Decade 1 of asking OWI for fucking combat ladders. Come on, guys.
So I personally, when I felt that I was now much more confined in those cities and the area was now much more claustrophobic, I actually like the fights a little bit more. I like the feeling of, trying to work through this CQB maze where I'm kind of stuck and the area is now significantly more precarious for me because going through it, I can't bail out, right? Going through it, I can't just escape, right? I'm committed. I need people to help me. If I want to get out there, I'm having a really big problem with just getting out at will. Um, and I don't have the freedom. It now has to affect how I approach that piece of terrain from the jump because I can't just do what I used to do to get out of it anymore. And personally, I think it's made the maps much more interesting because the vaulting gave me as an individual the ability to just say, yeah, fuck this. I'm out of here. Excuse my language. Sorry. I'm out of here. I'm going to leave. Right? I'm done with this piece of terrain. Oh, I want to go up there. I got it. No problem. Right? I don't have to build a ladder for my SL so I can do anything. I'm just up there. Right? I'm over this wall. It's fine. But I can still get over that wall. Hey, buddy, crouch for me real quick. I'm going up there. Right? I had a whole squad of dudes lift each other up, bound each other over a wall. It still works. I just can't do it by myself. I need a buddy.
What about that buddy?
What about the last guy?
What
See?
about the last guy?
You have to make the choice. You don't get to bring your buddy with you, right? And it's made it so that, just the entire squad jumping over as like a terrain traverse mechanic isn't effective because you got to leave somebody behind, right? If you want to do this. So are you doing it to like jump over a wall because the machine gun is pinning the door and you shoot that guy so the last guy can come around the corner, right? When you get him out, when you get everybody else over the wall. I think that's interesting to me, right?
I will say another thing I do like about the ICO kind of with the new CQB is not necessarily, but the gameplay loop is I notice if dudes are in buildings, guys are watching the rooms, working together as pairs, and using grenades way more. And I like that and kind of a tie into that. I think frag grenades, pretty much every kit needs an extra grenade at this point to help break some of those CQB stalemates. I mean, this is more. That's just my thoughts. Like
Flashbangs.
Yeah,
the game needs
Flashbangs would be
flashbangs,
nice.
and it needs a
I'd go with that,
mechanic
though.
where you can pull your buddies up from below. Not sure how OWI would even manage to code it with this game, but
And shotguns.
yeah, no, flashbangs would be cool. Maybe
All right.
hostile
Just
civilians.
Just
Hop
real
off.
quick, guys, because I've got to go soon.
good.
So I already sent it to Helios. Anybody else that wants it, just DM me. I'll send you the invite to it. SigTac is running Friday Night Fights tomorrow using Husky's mod. My personal opinion on the mod is it's a great example of that mid ground that we can find. I think we could even do with some more suppression effect than what he has on that mod. But we're going to test it out. Lots of experienced players coming, dedicated SLs. Hopefully, some really good matches going with a mid ground between ICO and vanilla. So, if you guys are interested in trying that out and seeing what it feels like, hop in on that event. Now, I'm going to go play squad because I'm an addicted shitbag. So,
Thanks so much for being here, Swooper. And really, well, not really quick, but it's getting really late. We already reached 3 hours, almost 4 hours into the podcast. So I just want to transition on to closing statements. I got to wake up early in the morning. It's still work day for me. Anyways, yeah, before we end, I just want to open the floor out to anybody here on the podcast to give any, last words before we, close this off. And then we'll save the VOD and publish it as usual for everybody to watch and listen to in the next coming days. And yeah, we'll have Aaron start with closing statements.
Aaron.
I like that you said AA Ron.
Right, that's what we're gonna have to do.
All right, Campo.
Share closing statements. I don't know. I guess everything I've outlined, I want the game to feel better for me personally. I think for a lot of other players, and I think a middle ground would suit everyone. I disagree with the sentiment that it would be a lose-lose for everyone. I think everyone would be happy with a middle ground. I guess that's it.
Awesome. Helios?
Guys, let's just try to be nice to each other. I don't know if there's a middle ground that can be had, but just because we all disagree with the way this game is going doesn't mean that we gotta, make this argument super toxic. Everybody's human regardless of whether or not they like blurry screens. So let's just try to chill out. But, it was really cool talking to you guys because I'm happy that I learned a lot more about the ICO than I knew coming into this discussion. And I think that's the way that every discussion should be about things that we do in our free time, right? None of this is absolute.
For sure. Thank you very much, Helios. Sandy?
I remain a can't think of the word for some reason. Consistently negative person, whatever that is. I think it starts with a B. I think we're kind of losing the forest for the trees. I've been watching all the past pods and stuff like that, so while I haven't been engaged in the conversation so far, I'd like to think that I'm a part of it as much as anyone else. I think it's wishful thinking that OWI would even listen to us for a 50-50 compromise on any of this stuff. I don't think that they're aiming for a compromise, otherwise they would have put all these changes in as separate playtest options or things to decide on, as opposed to dropping an update that made 10 changes at once. I really like the conversation and the debate that's coming out of this. I don't think I've ever seen the community this engaged. And to be fair, it's from one comp team doesn't really talk to the other one, short of talking about when the scrim or when the tournament is. But nice.
Awesome possum. Venom.
Alrighty. Yeah, I just want to, first of all, I want to say thanks, because as a ICO enjoyer, I was honestly kind of anticipating just being the punching bag a little bit. And I believe I kind of vocalized that, and it was kind of why I was hesitant about the podcast. But I'll be the first one to say I kind of have to eat my words on that one. Everybody had really good points. Kind of why they were ICO skeptical. I think the biggest thing is it's awesome that the community is this engaged, because it shows that we fundamentally all want Squad to get bigger, to be better. And I think that's the most important thing. I think for people that are ICO skeptical, I would say, let it cook. Give it a chance. Maybe consider, speaking up and being a FTL and being a squad lead, and, seeing, what it's like to get some more of that fire and movement based game. I think it's personally really satisfying. But other than that, thanks guys. It was a very fun conversation, and I can definitely sympathize with kind of the more of the, especially comp and very established players, like they're getting pushed out, but they aren't. Evolution, I think, for the most part, is always a good thing, and just because it's different, I would encourage you to think of different as not necessarily a bad thing.
Lovely. Thank you, Venom. And looks like our last person here is Kaba.
I think honestly we all can achieve a common ground, guys, because at the bottom of our hearts we deeply care about this game. That's why we're all here today. And yeah, I think the fundamental question is, will OWI just listen? That's all there is to it right now, I think, because I think it's clear now that a common ground is achievable.
Awesome. Again, thank you all very much, everybody here in the Discord voice chat. I know y'all stayed here for many, many hours for this, late at night or whatever time zone you're at around the world. Very much appreciated. This conversation tonight has been very lovely. And
These apologies, but mind if I just tackle one last thing on there?
Yes.
I just want to say people on both sides have a responsibility to turn down the temperature and keep the criticism constructive. I'll be the first one to be guilty of being toxic, but I'm going to try to make an effort to keep it constructive, and I would hope that everybody else does, so we can make the game better. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you, Venom. Very great point as well. And finally, thank you to everybody here, the viewers, squad community. Thank you for taking the time to come out and check it out and hearing everybody's perspectives and chiming in as well in the text chat. You all matter as well, and thank you for your questions to the panelists here. My final words tonight is our next big podcast is coming up this Sunday, 1800 UTC. Be there, be square. That one, it's going to have a special format. The 6 people that we invited or applied to be on the podcast have never participated yet on the podcast, so these are all fresh faces and fresh perspectives coming in. It'll be 3 pro or 3 ICO enjoyers, and also 3 contra ICO, and all of them have their middle ground suggestions as well. So we'll have 4 moderators for that discussion coming up. To make sure that everyone's perspectives can be heard. Expect that podcast to be around 3 hours, or a bit, later after that, depending how it goes. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. And, we expect a lot of people to show up to that. Everyone's really excited. Again, thank you all very much for supporting the podcast. We now have accumulated 30 hours of podcast hours about the ICO update. You're all amazing people. And the last thing I want to say is, make sure to buy Squad. Squad is on sale. Really great update that has came to this game. Really strong community. I'm your host, Socrates, and Squad community here. Signing out. Have a wonderful night. Thank you, everybody.
Raw.